Brett, moving on.
Okay, that takes us into scene 12.
Cap, you got a second?
Yeah, Fred, I just want to grab some coffee.
Yeah, listen, I think we need another take, buddy.
That looked pretty terrific, man.
This is gonna sound strange, but is Jamal seeing a speech coach or something?
What do you mean?
Have you noticed, this is weird for a white guy to say, but have you noticed he's talking a lot less black lately?
No, I haven't noticed that.
Really? Like in this scene, he was supposed to say, don't be talking about that, and he changed it to don't talk to me about that.
Wait a minute. You think because of that, the audience won't recognize him as being a black man? Come on.
Is there a problem, Cam?
Excuse me?
Is there a problem, Cam?
No, we don't have a problem.
I mean, because all I'm saying is it's not his character. Eddie's supposed to be the smart one, not Jamal, right? I mean, you're the expert here, but to me, it rings false.
We're gonna do it one more time.
This scene works really well because that is relatable. That happens every day. We don't see the people just berating people in the streets. So if the whole movie was like this, then it would be Oscar worthy. Then it would be, wow, this is a conversation starter.
That right there is the racism that actually matters, right? What happens behind closed doors, decisions that are made. Racism happens at a very granular level. That's why this scene, I agree with you 100%. That's why this scene hits home, because you're saying, oh yeah, this is an actual real life example of like racial biases and somebody backing down from the right thing because he's scared to do that. Those are the real life decisions that people make. I'm not going to complain to HR. I'm not. That's what real life America can relate to. It's not people yelling slurs in the middle of the street.
I'm shocked that this won Best Picture. I'm shocked that this won Best Screenplay, because I think the worst part about this is the writing. The whole movie is just outward dialogue of like, I'm mad at you because you're this color and I'm going to call you. We said the best scenes were the ones where you had to read between the lines, and the racism was not overtly bashed over your head with this poor writing.
Mexicans don't know how to drive. She blake too fast.
I blake too fast? You know, see my blake light.
Your amigo in there is gonna sell our key to one of his homies.
Yo, Osama, plan the jihad on your own time. Now I'm flying 747s into your mud huts and incinerating your friends. Get the fuck out.
Man, we done ran over a Chinaman.
You're saying there's a Chinaman under this truck?
There's a Chinaman stuck underneath the fucking truck.
Best screenplay, by the way.
I am so numb to the like racism in this movie at this point. Like, I just don't care. I just assume that two people of the different race are in the same room. Racism's happening.
It's coming.
It's just a foregone conclusion at this point. I just don't even care anymore. I'm like, all right, yep, racism is about to happen. Move on. Let's go. Yep, they hate each other. Color of the skin, couple slurs, tension. Next scene. It's predictable.
Hey, what's poppin', corn dogs? Welcome in. It is your favorite movie review podcast. Happy Oscar week. We dressed up. We're looking pretty good, comparable to how we usually do.
I think we're looking sharp.
Trying over here. We're trying, Nick.
James, I haven't busted this suit out since my wedding.
Wow, that's your wedding suit? Hell yeah.
Still fits.
I almost grabbed the tux, but this little blue boy was readily accessible, not in its dry cleaning bag. It's just kind of hanging out in the closet. Wore this to my sister's wedding. So we are dressing nice, and we are your host for this special, if you want to call it. I am Jimmy Popcorn, Jimmy Crackcorn. I'm Captain Pop. And, you know, you can catch me not inside the Kodak Theater cheering on the winners of the Oscars, but rather outside trying to heckle some losers as they walk out with no trophies, because I'm a problem. And I'm here with my fellow Problemo bro, Mr. Nick Corndog Justice, looking good in his wedding suit. Welcome in, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. I can also say that people need to catch me outside. How about that? Because I'm out there with you. Oof. 2 peas in a pod, 2 corns in a dog. We are here talking the Oscars. And as people know, because obviously everyone listens to this podcast on a weekly basis.
Every time.
We spun our wheel last week We have an Oscar movie to watch this week. And James, we also have some other fun stuff to do this episode. Why don't you tell our listeners and viewers, because you should be on YouTube watching us, seeing us in our spiffy outfits. Tell them what they have in store for this episode.
Yeah, first I want to just piggyback on that. If you are not watching this and you're listening on the audio, we are on YouTube. Full podcast episodes on YouTube. I know. We do this for you. At Just Play It Podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, at Just Play It Pod, on X. And we are here. Yep, like you said, Nick, this is our annual Academy Award edition of the show. The episode prior, we spin a wheel and we see what Best Picture winner we are watching for the year. And in 2025, we landed on the 78th annual Academy Awards winner, Crash, from 2004, but also 2005. I think it made a premiere in Toronto Film Festival in 2004, but it got its US wide release in 2005. And there's all this behind the scenes of, oh, let's put it out here and now so that we can make the Academy Awards for next year. However, the strategy is for that. So coming up, we're actually going to talk about the movie Crash, which is very controversial. We will also be doing our own version of awards called our Oscar Blind Picks. We're just going to blind pick some winners of 10 hand-picked categories for this year's 97th Academy Awards going into it, because that's coming up this weekend. So, Nick, we have just an absolute jam-packed episode, so we just got to get right to it. So coming up right after our pre-pop scores, we're going to give you our blind Oscar picks. But first and foremost, we're hitting you with our gut reaction scores for the movie Crash, the rating that comes to our heads fresh off this watch, and what we call our pre-pop scores. And over the course of this conversation we have, maybe by the end of the podcast, we'll have a different feeling, a different score, a more clear idea of how to rate this movie. And we'll reveal our final scores in the final review. But Nick, I have just one question for you. Have you seen this before?
No, this is a fresh watch for me. I'd never seen this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I believe you have seen this one before, correct?
I have seen this because I remember in high school when I got into a public school and is a lot more exposed to diversity, because you and I went to the same private school, K through 8, pretty small class, pretty not diverse at all. And I think it was a history teacher. He brought up this movie, he said, you guys should see the movie Crash. It's really good. And I remember seeing it as a 14 or 15-year-old freshman in high school and remembering it being very good. So let's see if that stuck with me. Nick, on 3, let's reveal our pre-pop scores for the movie Crash. 1, 2, 3. Nick, you're holding up a 3.2, and I, Nick,
somewhere between Cimarron and Schindler's List. So, James, for you, that is a wide gap, my friend.
Well, here's the thing. I'm shocked at an adult watch of this movie, because I remember this movie being really good and like, oh, this is going there. This is good stuff. This is teaching me some life lessons. And as I rewatched it, I thought, is it good? Is it teaching me life lessons, or is it kind of sloppy? Because I'll tell you, Nick, when I first queued up this movie, I thought it was going to be, I was like, yeah, maybe like it'll land at an 8. You know, it's not going to be the best thing I've ever seen, I'm sure. So let's just go into it because I know it's a good movie. And as I kept watching it, I was like, the dialogue is a little bit, and then I just kept going. And then by the end of it, I was like, what did I learn? What is this? So it went from like, maybe this is an 8 to maybe this is a 7 to maybe this is a 6 to maybe this is a 5 to maybe this is a 4. I was like, I am lost. But you, fresh watch, 3.2 you gave. Walk me through that in like 2 sentences.
So it's basically, without giving away what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the episode, it's a lot of what you said, James. I think we're going to find out that this movie was sloppily executed and is very, very broad for a very intricate topic. I'll put it to you that way.
I'll raise a glass to that. Come pie, give me a salute, because we're in for a whole night of shenanigans. And Nick, if you have anything else to add, I think we got to move into our blind Oscar picks. Any final words?
For those who don't know, though, for the reference, Cimarron and Schindler's List were the first two Oscar movies that we had watched on this podcast. So James is saying this is probably the second best one we've watched because Cimarron was ass and Schindler's List was good. So
yeah, Schindler's List is a
there.
really good movie, and Cimarron was very dated and also racist. So Nick, a lot of stuff to do. Let's just get to our blind Oscar picks. So for this year's Academy Awards, we have 10 categories that we are just making blind picks for. Nick, we counted it out. 25 different movies across our 10 hand-picked categories. Have you seen any of these movies?
I have not seen any of these
I have
movies.
seen zero. I have seen zero. So, over half of these I have not even heard of.
Sorry, I've seen one. I've seen Gladiator 2. I forgot it got a costume design nom. So I've seen Gladiator 2.
It's on the list. Okay. So reminiscent of last year where I think I only saw Barbie and Across the Spider-Verse, maybe another one. Apparently I'm a bad moviegoer for these hoity-toity boys. Nick, we actually have some cue cards, index cards, and we're going to reveal simultaneously our blind selections without seeing 23 to 25 of these movies each. Nick, our first category of nominees is going to be what the Academy says is the best male actor. And for some reason, we still split this up by gender, even though it's the exact same job. We don't have best male director, or best male cinematographer, or best female editor, or best female sound designer. It's all good. So it's all good. Just gives two people a chance to win an Academy Award. And our nominees are Adrian Brody from The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet from A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo from Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes, friend of the show, from Conclave, and Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier from The Apprentice. Nick, our blind picks for the best male actor on 3. 1, 2, 3. Show the crowd. Okay, you are holding up Adrian Brody, The Brutalist. I picked homeboy, friend of the show, Ray Fiennes from Conclave. Nick, any reason you went with Adrian Brody? Also friend of the show from Bullet.
Yes, sir. I did a small bit of research here into some of these movies, just general plot, like what is this movie even about? And let me just say, I think The Brutalist is going to have a good night.
I'll agree with that. I think it's going to have a really good night. But for just the sake of sticking with homies of the show, I'm just going to go with Ray Fiennes. It might be the one Conclave pick of the night. And I'm sure when we go over our results next time we do this, I'm going to be super wrong, just like I was last year. Nick, moving on, next category. What do we got?
Yes, now this is what the Academy is calling the best female actor.
Because they do the job differently.
Yes, and for this category, we have Cynthia Erivo from Wicked. We have Carla Sofia Gascon from Emilia Perez. We have Mickey Madison from Enora. We have Demi Moore from The Substance and Fernanda Torres from I'm Still Here. So, James, of these 5 fine ladies, on the count of 3, I need you to show me who you have winning this category. All right, James, let me see it in 3, 2, 1.
Read them and weep, boy.
James, I see you have Carla Sofia Gascon from Emilia Perez. Talk to me.
I see Emilia Perez littered on these categories, up for a lot of awards. I'm thinking they must be doing something right. Having never seen this movie, never heard this person, I'm going to go with Carla Sofia Gascon. How about you? You picked Cynthia Erivo from Wicked.
I did. I think Wicked will have a good night. I think Wicked was one of those movies Hollywood loves, cinema drama people absolutely love. James, real quick, just at the top of this. So Carla Sofia Gascon, Emilia Perez. I did read about this movie due to a controversy. I don't know when the Academy voted. Carla Sofia Gascon, trans actor. It's a musical about a trans Mexican drug lord. Seems right.
Hell yeah.
It seems like Oscar bait, right? Now, I don't know when they voted, but in the middle of last week, Carla Sofia Gascon sent out a tweet where she didn't praise, but she definitely questioned whether Hitler was a bad guy or not.
No, that means I'm wrong. They're not going to pick her now. They're not going to pick her now.
Yeah, she has since deleted all of her social media and has fallen off the face of the earth. So, sorry to break it to you, buddy.
I'm sticking with her. Let's defy the odds. You know what?
Hey, maybe
let's defy the odds.
Maybe Hollywood's into it. Who knows?
Fuck me. Okay. Nick, moving on to our next category, we have animated feature film. The nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. And I want to throw out a fun fact here. There's Memoir of a Snail and a Wallace and Gromit joint on here for the 97th Academy Awards. Crash, part of the 78th Academy Awards, had Memoirs of a Geisha, almost a snail, and Wallace and Gromit in The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. So we're living a little bit deja vu here with animation and best pictures. Memoirs, baby. Okay. Speaking of, Nick, give me your pick for the best animated feature film on 3. 1, 2, 3. Show the crowd. Nick, we both went with The Wild Robot. In your own words, very quickly, summarize your thoughts.
My wife said it's a fantastic kids book and that she loves the book and it's going to make a great movie. So trusting my wife on this one, The Wild Robot.
The Wild Robot, for me, I am aware of this movie and it looks very good. I feel like I would love this movie. I'd probably cry at it. It seems like it has maybe some Iron Giant tones to it because, as we know in that movie, it's a big kind of mech robot that crash lands on planet Earth and learns about humanity, and then the deer that dies from the hunter, and then he learns about death. I feel like there's going to be a lot of like kind of dark subject matter, but it's going to be a beautiful story. So this is a movie I want to see, and I think that's why it's going to win. I think it seems like it'd be a great movie.
Yeah, seems right up the alley. It's a feel good one. I like it. Wallace and Gromit, that British trash. Get it out of here.
Nah, get the hell out of here, Wallace and Gromit.
All right, James, that brings us into our next category here, cinematography. This is something we talk about a lot on this podcast. So it's something we love and we respect. So in that vein, let's take a look at our 5 finalists for cinematography. We have The Brutalist. We have the first showing of Dune Part 2 in these awards for us. We have Emilia Perez, we have Maria, and we have Nosferatu.
I feel like I know what you're going to pick.
James, on the count of 3, let's show them. 1, 2, 3.
I knew you were going to pick that. I just knew you were going to pick that. James,
you picked Nosferatu. You tell me why.
It's black and white. I feel like that's just going to cream some jeans of the cinematographers. I feel like I was going to go with Dune Part 2 because it's massive, it's epic looking, it's made for the big screen. But just going with my normal bullshit, just picking a wild card, Nosferatu. I heard it was a great movie. Haven't seen it, obviously. I said I saw 0 out of these 25 movies. But Nick, walk me through very quickly why you are going with Dune Part 2 with our boy Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, and speaking of, I saw Timothée Chalamet there on the Best Actor list. I thought it was going to be for Dune 2, but it was for A Complete Unknown. So that kind of threw me for a loop. But it's basically what you said about Dune Part 2. It's big. It's an epic. These are massive sets. It's very dusty and sandy. Hollywood loves movies like that. It's like a Blade Runner kind of thing going on.
Love dust.
Yeah, they do. And I think after last year's Oppenheimer, people are starting to respect more of these big epics that get people into the theater, get people talking. So I think it has a good chance here for cinematography.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, moving on to one of your favorite categories, which is costume design. Our nominees for this year are A Complete Unknown, speaking of, Conclave, Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and Wicked. Nick? On the count of 3, let's show the crowd. Say it out loud. what we picked for best costume design. 1, 2, 3. Read 'em and weep. Ooh, okay, Nick, you went with Nosferatu when I went with Wicked. Tell me, why'd you pick Nosferatu?
Yeah, I felt like I had to give it some sort. I think there's a nostalgia for it in Hollywood. It has a really fun backstory. Nosferatu does, right? They wanted to do Dracula. That was copywritten, so somebody in Hollywood decided to make Nosferatu. There was one physical copy left of it. It was on its last leg. It got brought back. Like, it has this legend in Hollywood, and I think the theater people, the cinema people are going to respect it. And I think it deserves at least one win. I know you had it for its last one for cinematography, and I kind of just shoehorned it into costume design. Tell me about Wicked. What are we thinking here?
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly as far as getting the one win. I think it's going to get one win, and I'm just going with cinematography. But for costume design, Wicked just seems like that prototypical movie that would have best costumes because there's a lot of wacky and wild characters in the land of Oz. Kind of a similar strategy I did last year when I picked Barbie, because I thought it's a lot of just kind of out there costumes. I believe Poor Things ended up winning due to your rational reasoning of it being the only original concept. Everything else was based on actual historical clothing or just Barbie clothing. So that's where I'm coming from. It's colorful, it's fun, and I'm sure the costume designers had a lot of fun making those costumes.
Now, does costume also usually fit in with makeup, or isn't makeup a separate?
No. There's a whole. So we
separate.
There's a lot of categories we're not going to cover. We're not doing sound. We're not doing editing. We're just doing a handpicked amount, and makeup is one of them. That it's a separate award.
I could definitely see Wicked snagging that one for sure. All right, James. We're gonna get into one of those meat and potato categories. One of those big boys, a very, very coveted one. It's a way that we judge people's career, and this is for directing. So our 5 finalists in the directing category are Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbett or Corbet from The Brutalist, James Mangold, A Complete Unknown, Jacques Ardiard, Amelia Perez, and Coralie Farge from The Substance. I don't know. Some of these guys have some European sounding names.
Fargiat.
with the count of 3.
Bro or girl got a big ass booty. Fargiat. Sorry, everybody.
She got that Fargiat. All right, we're gonna go ahead, reveal on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, James, you have pulled up James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, and I have Brady Corbett from The Brutalist. James, explain to me James Mangold, friend of the show.
I feel like I know your reasoning for Brady Corbett or Corbet, but for me, it's just a homer pick. You know, I'm known to do these. James Mangold, I love James Mangold. He was a friend of the show. He did Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, a movie we reviewed last year. I think he's a great director. It's kind of the same thing as Nosferatu. I think A Complete Unknown could muster up one win, and this might be it. Without knowing anything, that's my reason. Nick, why is Brady Corbett winning? Because The Brutalist is going to be the sweeper this year? It's going to be the Oppenheimer this year?
Yeah, I think The Brutalist has a good night, and I think, from what I researched about the movie, it's a survivor of a Nazi concentration camp, a Jewish guy who immigrates into the United States and then is making his life here in the U.S. Feels like one of those big, long stories, an epic. It's not an epic, but a life of a man through extenuating circumstances. Feels Oscar-y, so I'm going with it. Trusting my gut.
Excellent. And you can feel those vibrations in your gut with music, because our next category is going to be Music Best Original Score. The nominees are Daniel Bloomberg for The Brutalist, Volker Bertelmann from Conclave. Talk about some European ass names. Clement Ducol and Camille for Amelia Perez, John Powell and Steven Schwartz for Wicked, and Chris Bowers for The Wild Robot. Nick, on 3. Let's reveal our picks. Blind picks for Music Best Original Score. 1, 2, 3. Alrighty, Nick, you picked Clement Ducol and Camille for Amelia Perez. I went with Daniel Bloomberg from The Brutalist. Why are you going with Amelia Perez, that Hitler praising bitch?
So I believe for me, I if voting happened after that, I don't think they're going to punish the movie as a whole. I think they probably still like the concept, trans Mexican drug lord reconnecting with her kids. It's a musical. So there's a lot of original songs about being trans. Seems like Oscar bait on that. I don't think they punish the music on this.
Score. This is score, not songs.
Yeah. Joel, don't get me wrong. I believe a little bit of both, but I think that whole musical end. But because the actress is not involved in the actual part of this, I don't think this movie gets punished in this aspect for it. All right. Talk to me, James, about Daniel Bloomberg from The Brutalist.
So I haven't had a lot of exposure to advertisements or promos for all of these movies. I have seen a couple commercials for The Brutalist, and the score, it always kind of caught my ear because it kind of sounded like the Raiders March. And it was like, and then but then it would kind of go into a totally different melody. So I thought, you know what, this could be kind of part of the sweepness here. This could be just one of the many awards The Brutalist sweeps up on the night. And that's my only reasoning, having never seen any of these movies or heard any of these scores.
Yeah, crazy to me a little bit because we're usually pretty in tune with the composers around Hollywood, and these are some fresh faces. You know, we're used to seeing a lot of those mainstays.
Yeah.
And we don't have those this year.
Good for these guys.
All right, James. We're sticking in that musical vein. We're going with music, best original song. And our finalists are El Mal from Amelia Perez, The Journey from a movie called The 6888, Like a Bird from Sing Sing, Mi Camino from Amelia Perez, and Never Too Late from Elton John. Never Too Late.
Who could have guessed?
We're going to show our answers here on the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. James, you are showing me Like a Bird from Sing Sing. I have gone with Never Too Late from Elton John. Never Too Late. Talk to me. Is this the one that Sing Sing grabs at the Oscars?
I think it is. Nick. I almost went with Never Too Late because it's about Elton John. I'm sure he wrote the song and performed it. I don't know. Shout out Amelia Perez, 2 songs on here. But no, I am going with Like a Bird because if it's anything like that song, I'm like a bird, it's going to be very catchy. And also, the movie's called Sing Sing, so it's got to be about music. And that's my only reasoning for picking Like a Bird from Sing Sing. Nick, why did you pick Never Too Late from Elton John? Never Too Late.
Well, James, I like Elton John.
All right, moving on. Nick, our next set of nominees is going to be visual effects. Now we got some fun ones in here. These are ones I actually heard of, but I still have never seen. So for the best visual effects, our nominees are Alien Romulus, Better Man, never heard of it, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. Nick, on the count of 3, we're going to show the crowd, share our thoughts, what we think has taken home the Oscar for Best Visual Effects for the 97th Annual Academy Awards. 1, 2, and 3. Nick, we are both showing Dune Part 2. This is going to be my one Dune award of the night because I almost went cinematography, but I just think it's too big and epic. If it doesn't take home cinematography, I think it might take home visual effects. With that said, Alien Romulus could definitely take it. I don't know if the crowd is necessarily excited for the 5th or 6th or 8th Planet of the Apes movie. I don't know where I didn't know they're still making those.
So yeah, that's my thing. It's like I feel like they look like the same apes from the last 3 movies. So it's like we didn't do anything new here.
I'm going with Dune Part 2 because I think it's going to take home one award, and I'm going with visual effects. Why are you going with Dune Part 2 as well?
Yeah, I think it's just too big, right? Like the magnitude of the movie is so big and large, and it basically is 100% special effects. It reminds me, very much. I didn't see Part 2. I've seen Dune Part 1. Has a very similar feel to me, like a Mad Max. Visually impressive. You're watching it and you're transported into that world. The effects really bring you in. So this one was an easy one for me on Dune Part 2. James, we're going to wrap this bad boy up here with the big dog. The thing we care about, the movie that is going to be added to our wheel of Oscar winners next year, because we are going to check out the Best Picture. Now, I don't know when we decided to put 10 movies into the Best Picture nominations. We just wanted to make people feel good. James, you got an anecdote. You hit me with it.
I know exactly when they did it. They did it in 2009, and you'll probably love this reasoning. So and actually it did change the voting system as well. So in 2009, they decided to up the amount of movies that could be nominated for Best Picture from 5 to 10 because of, I think it was just like the quantity of good stuff that's out there, and people get really outraged when something gets snubbed and doesn't make it. It's actually going to relate to a throwback, a Cinematrix quiz answer that we were thinking of Christopher Nolan and a Best Picture nominee. And we thought this movie had to be nominated for Best Picture. Nick, that would be Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. That did not make so it was a 2008 movie. It didn't make the 2009's whatever anniversary Academy Awards that was. It didn't make the slate. People are pissed, and rightfully so. That's a fantastic movie.
Deserved it. Yeah,
definitely deserved a nomination. So
I don't know
actually
who won
after
in
that,
09, but I can hit you with a quick Google.
Nick's gonna pull up who won that year.
It was Slumdog Millionaire, so you lost to a good one.
It's a good Danny Boyle, I think, who did that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. But I think Dark Knight definitely should have been nominated. Now, the Academy didn't outright say that it was because of that, but we all know. We all know it's because of Dark Knight didn't get nominated. So I think it was politically motivated. They probably just wanted more viewers. So when Black Panther was nominated for Best Picture, I was like, I love Black Panther. I don't know if it's Best Picture worthy. I think it was a little bit like, hey, let's get some more viewers to watch the Oscars that wouldn't normally watch it because Marvel has such a huge fan base.
Would that be the first superhero movie nominated?
It could be
for Best Picture,
which is why I'm shocked. It's just part of like a large cinematic universe. Ryan Coogler is amazing. The whole movie was quite the spectacle. Looked really, really good. I just didn't think it was going to make Best Picture. I'm happy it did, but it just seems like a little bit of a Dark Knight move. Like, let's get the mainstreamers in this.
If the Academy was honest with themselves, every year the Best Picture would have been like an Avengers Endgame, Iron Man, right? These are the best pictures. We'll get into this, but it's something I hate about the Academy, which is that's not what the Best Picture is for all of America. It's you, the stuck-up movie critic. And, even outside of just the people liked it, The Dark Knight is just visually so impressive. And I'm glad Nolan's now getting a lot more recognition. I mean, he always has, but for how good he is at turning everything he does into art. But James, let's look at these Best Pictures for 2025. So our 10 finalists here are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, first time we've heard that one.
Nickel Boys?
The Substance, and Wicked. So we got 10. It's only one can win. James, I want to hear what you think on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Put them up.
And the award goes to The Brutalist. Nick, we hinted at it.
Brutalist.
We think it's going to have a great night. I'll just hit you with why I think it's going to have a great night. It looks... I know nothing about the movie, but I just saw advertisements for it. I just saw the amount of times it was put up for other categories. I'm like, okay, this is giving me Oppenheimer, power, moves, vibes. This is obviously the one that people are going to want to go for the head. It's getting a lot of noms. I think I'll just take it. Gut reaction. No idea. Never seen it. That's my thoughts. How about you?
Yeah, very similar thoughts. From what I've read about the subject matter, seems right up the Academy's, alley. You got Guy Pearce, you got Adrian Brody, you got Felicity Jones. These are names. These are people. These are good performers. I can see it being a good movie. And I just think subject matter, you know, the movie posters an upside down Statue of Liberty. It's like, oh, it's a retrospective on America. You're like, yeah. Oh, symbolism. You know, as we'll find out with Crash, the Academy loves thinking they know symbolism and what's going on in America. So that's The Brutalist.
Okay. Well, that wraps up our Oscar predictions, blind predictions. I'll just throw this right here. 97th Academy Awards, so we don't get lost on what we're talking about.
Woo!
Oh, I want to make it rain. Oh, they're all stuck together because they're sticky notes. That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
There's none of it got in my drink, so that is good.
We'll fix
All
it
right,
in post.
Moving on. A lot of stuff to cover here. So we are going to start talking about the movie we watched this week, which was Crash. This is directed by Paul Haggis. And Nick, I didn't recognize a lot of stuff that this guy directed besides Crash. I haven't heard of any of these, but as far as his writing credits go, a lot more recognizable. Writer of a lot of TV episodes. Most notably, he's one of the creators of Walker, Texas Ranger. He also was a writer on $1 Million Baby, Flags of Our Fathers, and Letters from Iwo Jima, one of the co-writers on those two movies. Also on a couple James Bond movies, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Wow. He was also a writer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So
I saw that too.
Man.
Yeah, one of the writers for that.
Man does some war movies. If you've seen Crash, you think this doesn't seem in the same vein as everything else he's written. But here we are.
Right. Nick, who is on the call sheet for this bad boy? There's a lot. This is a stacked ass cast.
There's a lot. Our top three build, who we usually look at, right, as those top three, is Don Cheadle, Sandra Bullock, and Thandiwe Newton. Thandiwe Newton. Thank you. I knew I was going to butcher that. Thandiwe. And but we have the likes of Brendan Fraser's in this. We got Ludacris in this. We have Matt Dillon, Keith David, Tony Danza. I mean, we have Jennifer Esposito is in this as well.
Terrence Howard, man.
How could I forget Terrence Howard? Friend of the show.
There's a bunch of friends of the show. There's a couple future friends of the show in here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I know for a fact there's a future friend of the show.
A lot of buds.
But Nick, this is what they would call an ensemble cast, and I have to just address the elephant in the room. This movie is very divisive. It's very controversial. Yes, I know we have both versions of Colonel James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, from the Iron Man trilogy. Awkward,
to say the least.
Awkward. Pre-MCU, they're both here. It's awkward. They're 2 of 3 Iron Man trilogy actors in this movie. This movie has a lot of actors. Quite the ensemble. I thought it was funny they threw Sandra Bullock at the top, and actually I'll call this out when we get into our plot talk. They bill her first, and she's probably in the movie the least amount of time. And Brendan Fraser. Like, it's definitely Don Cheadle.
The reason why is going to defeat the reason of this movie.
Like, Don Cheadle is in the movie way more than Sandra Bullock, and she's the first credit up on the screen. And I think it's just like a buzzword name, you know, just probably the most recognizable name, maybe.
White lady.
This movie's racist.
Hey, our movie's about racism, but let's put the white people up top.
Let's put Sandra Bullock, who has like 8 lines in this movie.
Oh, these people suck. Let's go.
Ludacris did more acting than Sandra Bullock in this movie.
He did.
Whatever. Nick, hit me with some dollar signs here. What are we working with the budget and the box office?
Now, you may be surprised hearing about all those actors in this movie that the budget was an estimated $6.5 million. This really felt like one of those movies where actors came in, got sold, hey, we're making a social commentary. You want to be a part of this? And a lot of actors said, yeah, I'll commit some time to this. It paid off because the box office worldwide is at $98.4 million. So, I mean, you're returning 15%, damn near, a little more. Not 50%, 15x.
1,514% return on the budget. Yeah. Super, super small budget for the time. When I get into the development backstory, we'll kind of get to know the numbers and why people came in for so cheap. But let's just get right to that. Nick, I got some anecdotes about the backstory of this movie. But first, unfortunately, I got to talk about Paul Haggis, this fucking guy. So since Crash has come out, he's done a lot of projects, a lot of Oscar buzz around him. But sexual assault, classic Hollywood. So this is going to be from an article from Variety. I'm just going to read off some tidbits here. Let me know if you have anything to add. Variety. So Haley Breest sued Haggis in 2017, claiming the filmmaker forced her to perform oral sex on him and then raped her in his Soho apartment. Breest was working as a freelancer at a movie premiere on January 31st, 2013, which Haggis attended as a guest. Though he doesn't deny the encounter took place, Haggis maintains that it was consensual. So we got an accusation here, Nick.
That's a pretty serious allegation.
Sensitive subject. Breest, who was 26 at the time, told jurors she reluctantly agreed to have a drink at the director's apartment after he denied her suggestion to go to a public bar. She recalled feeling, in quote, absolutely paralyzed and terrified, as the then 59-year-old Haggis kissed her against her will and took her into a bedroom where the alleged sexual assault transpired. Not looking good for boy Paul.
This is a lot of detail for a fake allegation.
Oh, get ready, because I'm about to go into a way more graphic detail. In Haggis' testimony, he presented a different picture of the events that took place on that night. He alleged that Breest appeared to be very interested in him and voluntarily performed oral sex on him after stating she is, quote, very good at this. Haggis also admitted to jurors that Breest was giving off mixed signals at his apartment and says he had no memory of engaging in sexual intercourse with her that night.
So I don't know if you've seen a picture of Haggis.
I have.
This reminds me of Harvey Weinstein. It's nobody's very interested in you, buddy.
Which is why this came out, because of all the Weinstein crap. This Haley Breest gal was like, you know what? I'm going to keep this guy accountable and call him out. Because the saga continues at the trial. Judge Sabrina Krause played a few short clips from Haggis and Breest's original video depositions. In the video, Haggis initially answered no when asked, again, we're not a kid show. Here we go. He answered no when asked if his penis penetrated Breest's vagina. He later clarified, it certainly could have. My best memory is that I fell asleep after having oral sex, but that's because I cannot swear to what occurred after that. I don't know if it occurred or not. I have no memory. End quote. Nick, your thoughts?
What a terrible defense for rape. I don't remember if I did it or not. Could have, maybe, might have done it.
The Church of Scientology has come up repeatedly in this case. Haggis and his attorneys claim that Breest's rape charge came in retaliation over the director's decision to leave and loudly criticize the controversial religion in 2009. During the trial, attorneys for each party seemingly agreed there's no evidence to suggest Breest has ties to Scientology. But the defense claims the reason there's no tangible proof is because the church doesn't leave behind fingerprints. Breest's team had chalked up the argument to a conspiracy theory. So now we got the Church of Scientology in the mix. Classic.
So the Church of Scientology has actually been a godsend for a lot of these terrible people because they'll just blame them. And the Church of Scientology did have that kind of power like in 2006. But by 2017, everyone was joking about them. Like this Trey Parker and Matt Stone were like everyone was making fun of them. They held no more real power in Hollywood. So they're just this boogeyman that you could just say, oh, the Church of Scientology did it. They're like, there's no evidence because they're really good at it. Okay.
Though only
also, fuck the
Breest,
Church of Scientology. If we didn't say, we've said that said that before on this
enemy
podcast.
of the show.
Enemy
of the show from Battlefield Earth, as we all know.
But they're not the boogeyman. They can't just make everything in the world disappear.
It's like Randy Quaid when he thought the Hollywood Star Whackers were coming after him, so he hid out in a bunch of Canadian hotels. As we learned from our Adventures of Pluto Nash episode. Though only Breest was suing Haggis, her legal team used the testimonies of 4 additional women, all of whom accused the filmmaker of assault, to demonstrate that his alleged rape of Breest follows a pattern of behavior. I'm going to switch over to Deadline. This is per Deadline. One woman testified that Haggis raped her in 1996 in his Toronto production office for the TV show Due South. Haggis said he already was back in Los Angeles by then. Another woman said Haggis came at her in 2008 during a meeting in his Santa Monica film production headquarters saying, "I want to be inside you." And she fled the building. Haggis said his actual words were, "I want to sit beside you."
You just didn't hear me right.
Back to Variety. Paul Haggis lost his civil rape trial after a New York jury found the Academy Award-winning director liable on charges that he sexually assaulted a former film publicist after a movie premiere in 2013. Haggis was found liable on all 3 counts of rape and sexual abuse. $7.5 million in compensatory damages were awarded to Breest, and that's the end of that saga.
I'm just going to be on the record saying I hate that some of these trials end civilly and not criminally. If that's what you're doing, Paul Haggis, I just straight to jail.
Straight to jail for the Hags.
I was going to say you're better than this, but you're not.
So that's 2013, 2017. That juror, it wasn't. I think the when it got settled, it was in 2022. So just as recently as right before we started doing this podcast. So, yikes! All right. So let me talk about Crash, how it came to be very quickly. Per the Huff Post, which I think is like the media that kind of skews a little bit more left. It's interesting because this is a headline. It says, Paul Haggis, I wrote Crash to bust liberals, by Ryan Buxton, June 19th, 2014. Haggis told HuffPost Live, quote, "I wanted to write that movie to bust liberals. It's too easy to bust folks we consider to be racist." Haggis said Crash was an exploration of people who fixate on political correctness, but are often blind to their own prejudices. So I think he aligns himself with liberals, but I think he was saying like, we're going to call them out. But yeah, that was his ideology behind it.
What? As someone who's seen this movie, what? Okay.
Haggis, quote, "It's those people who think we have it all figured out, who think we're good people, we're good liberals. Those are the people you can't trust because there's a level of denial."
I mean, we're talking, we'll talk. Okay. No, I'll save it.
How this idea came up. This is from the Los Angeles Magazine. Haggis, quote, "I woke up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat because I pictured my tombstone and it said Paul Haggis, creator of Walker, Texas Ranger. I had to do something to erase that image. So I left television and wrote Crash and $1 Million Baby. What would be so wrong about being known as the creator of Walker, Texas Ranger? I'm sorry."
Okay. Yes, that 100% agree with that statement. But 2, if you're doing something like a social commentary just to become important and have your name be remembered, I guarantee you
Red flag.
It's not going to turn out well. If I looked at somebody and said, I give to charity so that people will remember my name, you're a shitty person. You should give to charity because that's the right thing to do. So this makes a lot of sense. I had not read any of this, but this is making a whole lot of sense.
This next part will also make a lot of sense, going back to the sexual assault charges. In the article, he also says that he's told that story many times, like the nightmare of that he woke up in Tombstone. He says he's told that story many times that he doesn't even know if it's true anymore. So that just got me thinking like, oh, like maybe I had sex with that lady. Maybe I forgot.
What do you mean? What kind of sick psycho says that? Yeah, I've told that story so many times. It's just, I might have lied, but the only reason I think I might have lied is because I've said it so many times. Also, the having a dream of standing over your tombstone and it saying something is like, this guy lives in fantasy land. Because that is just a movie trope. That doesn't actually happen to real people. This isn't the ghost of Christmas future showing up to Ebenezer Scrooge's house and showing him his goddamn tombstone. This is fucking ridiculous.
Well, let's get even more ridiculous.
I fucking hate Paul Haggis.
I'm going to switch over to SF Gate. We have the meaning of why he did it, but now the actual concept of it. Paul Haggis was actually carjacked back in 1991 with his then new Porsche. It was actually outside of a Blockbuster. It was him and his wife. They just came from a screening of Silence of the Lambs. So they were having a great time. They stop at Blockbuster on Wilshire Boulevard to round out the evening with a double feature. Just really just make it sexy with 2 movies. With an offbeat Norwegian film in hand, Haggis was about to follow his wife into the car, and then two men with guns approached him and jacked the shit out of his car. He says, "I screamed at my wife to get the fuck out," Haggis recalled. "We started to walk away when I felt a gun in my back. One of the guys reached down and grabbed the video and then raced off in my car." So they stole the car, and they also stole apparently the video they rented from Blockbuster. So my question is, did they go back into Blockbuster and say, "Hey, craziest thing, I'm not going to be able to return that movie because I just got stolen from me along with my Porsche"?
You just hope those people aren't the worst kind of people and at least drop it in the Dropbox later on.
The little slot. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. I don't know if I believe this guy. I don't believe a word this guy says anymore. I don't know if that story actually happened.
Maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't. Who knows?
I tell the story so much that I don't even know if it's real.
Well, it's real in his mind because he says once a year for the next 10 years, I would think about who those kids were. Were they best friends or had they just met that night? Did they do this a lot or was it the first time? 2001, right after September 11th, Haggis was awakened by this recurring thought. He knew if he went to his computer, he would never go back to sleep. And the odds were that anything he'd write at that hour would be a terrible idea. But if I didn't get up, I'd forget all about it. And it could be the best idea I've ever had. That would be a 35-page outline for this movie called Crash. And he called his buddy Bobby Moresco to turn it into a screenplay.
What a self-important prick. I cannot stand this guy. Oh, I was thinking about these. Once a year, I think about these guys who carjacked me. What's their life story? So I woke up and I knew if I got to my computer, I just would never go back to sleep because I'm so creative. I'm so creative that the words would just flow into my fucking computer.
Nick's about to crash out. Nick's about to crash out. Nick is going to crash out at the end of Crash.
But to
Let's
I
go.
hate this is these I hate
Variety.
this is the worst of Hollywood. Paul Haggis. Keep going.
Article from 2006. Haggis, quote, "When we finished it, you'll love this, I really didn't know if it was a script. And in fact, when we shot it, I didn't know if it was a movie." He says of the film's unconventional structure and its lack of one protagonist. "Really, we stitched together the series of fables. I remember asking Bobby, how do we know when to stop? And Bobby said, I think it's when the characters stop talking." For me, my takeaway is they didn't even think they had a complete script. They didn't believe in their story. They just were kind of going for it and then just were like, did we do it? I don't know. A lot of shrug of the shoulders with that statement. Long pause from the corn dog. Moving on to Vulture, an article.
I'm mad.
They bring in, so Don Cheadle gets a hold of the script and he actually likes it a lot. And he becomes a producer on this movie and says it was just really touching and I had not been moved like that reading a script in a long time. So Cheadle was attached to the project as an actor and producer, helping garner other big names at the time like Ryan Felipe, Lorenz Tate, and Matt Dillon. Don Cheadle says, because the material was risky and Paul was an unknown, the other actors wanted to know how I felt. Brendan Fraser and Sandra Bullock signed on for a fraction of their usual salaries. Michael Pena says, I definitely made less than $10,000, but I was just stoked to have a role. Like, wow, this is my dream. Because he's coming off a lot of projects where he's playing Gangbanger number 3 or Mexican number 2 or Guy in the Back. So a lot of these guys came in and they only worked 1 week, I'd say. And they got paid just the base rate of what they needed. And it really was Don Cheadle that garnered all of these amazing actors to show up in this movie.
Good for Don. I mean, I can see how you would like I honestly have this question about Hollywood. I can see how you could like a concept of a movie and think it's cool, a little edgy, a little different. And maybe you read the script and go, ooh, that writing is rough, but it'll evolve through filming, right? Like a lot of scripts evolve throughout the filming process and there's input. I'm imagining that this movie did not go through that refinement process of the writing during filming, or it did, and the original script was god awful.
Well, it just makes me worried when they're like, we finished it, and we're like, are we done? It's like, sounds like you don't even know if.
How do we know when it's done?
So it premieres at film festivals, and there's some people that are calling out it's bullshit, rightfully so, and then some people are like, wow, that was touching and amazing. Lionsgate is at these premieres and screenings, and they're like, we gotta hop on this, and all the other film companies are like, we don't have to hop on this. So they bought it, they distribute it, and then they push for an Oscar campaign for like screenplay and directing, and even Haggis and Moresco didn't have faith that it was going to win Best Picture, but the producers and the backers were like, let's just do this. Let's go. Let's make that Oscar campaign run. So fast forward to 78th Academy Awards, we have Best Original Screenplay. It wins the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. Paul gives a speech, and Moresco says, it was my time at the microphone, and they cut to commercial. The only thing I really cared about was thanking my parents, my wife, and my friends from the old neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen, but I never got a chance. The win was really bittersweet for me. Nick, I pulled up the YouTube clip. So when you watch it, Moresco comes up, and then they're already in the wide shot of ready to go to commercial. They cut the mic, they dim the lights. He's at the microphone talking, and they cut to the cast, and you can see Sandra Bullock and Terrence Howard look like they really feel for the guy. They're like, oh, man, he's trying to say something. It's pretty funny. Sorry, Moresco, you got shut out.
Yeah, write a better movie though.
Michael Pena wasn't invited to the Oscars.
No,
everyone else in the cast were all big stars. I was nobody. He laughs. So instead, I watched it at a viewing party on La Cienega. My agency at the time had set it up for me to attend, but they wouldn't let me in. And he said, "No, I'm in Crash. I swear." Finally, they let me in. I got a drink, sat by myself. When we won, I screamed like the Bears won the Super Bowl in '86. He's from Chicago. And I was the only one cheering. People are staring at me. They just went back to drinking their drinks. Michael Pena, you little sweetheart.
Can't fault Michael Pena. Love the guy.
Amongst all the success, real estate investor turned film financier Bob Yari sued the Academy and the PGA, not the PGA Tour, Producers Guild of America, for keeping his name off the credits and depriving him of an Oscar. A Los Angeles judge ruled that Yari was in breach of contract and owed about $12 million to Haggis, Moresco, and Fraser for failing to pay them profits. Yari had also been denied a producer credit on the movie by the Producers Guild of America, which resulted in him not making the cut as one of the winners of the movie's Best Picture Oscar. That was my thanks for making Paul's movie when everyone turned it down. It was very unpopular to me to have gone after the board members of the Academy Producers Division, which ruled that the PGA ultimately could determine who the Oscar went to. It was a very kiss the ring kind of stuff, but I wasn't going after the Academy's membership. I was going after the people running it to force them to behave properly. And that's it. That's the backstory of this movie.
That's how this got made.
Just woke up, said I need to make this because I don't want to be known for Walker, Texas Ranger. I'm going to call up my homeboy. We're not going to know if we made a complete script or not. After we finish filming the movie, we're not going to know if we have a complete movie or not. Oh, we're going for an Oscar run. I don't believe it's Best Picture worthy. This did beat Brokeback Mountain, which a lot of people, friend of the show, Ong Lee, was directed Brokeback Mountain, also directed 2003's Hulk. A lot of people were very upset that did not win. And Nick, we had a discussion of why we think they went with Crash. The Academy nowadays is made up of about 9,500 active voters, which is directors, actors, producers, and other professionals in the trade. And I don't know if it was that many back then. I know the voting now is a ranked system, whereas back then it was just majority rules. It was just, yeah. So back in the day, it was majority, and they did that new voting system when they added 10 movies to the slate. So Nick, we thought, it might seem like it's a little bit of pandery pick from everybody. This is a big ensemble. Actors make up a large amount of those voters. So we're thinking maybe that was it. We know one had to do with racism and one had to do with the gays. Two of them had to do with gay characters. Capote. Can't forget Capote.
Yeah, you can't. So, yeah, I mean, talk about a rock and a hard place. Brokeback Mountain being the hard place.
Hey, hard in the tent. Let's go.
Whoa. So, yeah, it was, I can't imagine the internal pander struggle that a lot of these people went through as far as what to pick. Like, oh, do I care more about racism or gay people? And they just their heads exploded over it. Instead of just picking the best damn movie of the year. That's what went through their head. I want to know the third place movie that was like, well, we had a really good movie, but we didn't have any gay people or talk about racism. So like we never had a chance.
It was Memoirs of a Geisha and Good Night and Good Luck.
Oh, Memoirs of a Geisha. So they had that going for them. But Good Night and Good Luck was screwed.
Yeah, they had no chance. What's funny is that after the winner was awarded of Crash, people are calling out the Academy for being homophobic because they're like, Brokeback Mountain didn't win.
Yeah,
Capote
you couldn't win.
What's your deal? What's your deal,
win.
Academy?
If you didn't do Crash, they'd be like, oh, you're pro racism, huh?
Oh, you're racist? Okay.
You like gay people, but you hate minorities. What's going on? I mean, at least it's all anonymous.
Tough place.
You could always lie. You could always lie about it. Like, I voted for both. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's the backstory, Nick. We are just going to get into this movie. I'm going to go ahead and read this log line and we can jump into plot talk and share our thoughts on the unraveling of this crash course collision catastrophe. Log line is Los Angeles citizens with vastly separate lives collide in interweaving stories of race, loss, and redemption. Sounds gripping, sounds Oscar-y. I guess I'll watch it, especially because the wheel told me so. And we're going to talk about it in Plot Talk.
Plot Talk.
I didn't recall any redemption stories. I didn't see redemption arcs, but okay.
All right, Plot Talk time, Nick. Here we go. And I'm already starting out with a goddamn nitpick.
Nitpicks.
Right off the rip. Right off the rizzle here. Call the Rizzler, because I have a problem. We spend about 80 seconds bragging about the 7 companies that made this film. And it makes me think of that Family Guy bit when Peter Griffin goes to the movies and he's like, all right, let's go see what this movie's about. Oh, we got a plane coming in. It must be doing with plane. Oh, and it ends up being a logo.
Yeah. Ooh, a pirate ship.
All right, now the movie's starting. That's like, yeah, no. We're still, so we have 4 logos in the front end. And I have a feeling it came after the fact of this movie is making an Oscar push and they're like, oh, make sure our logos are on here. I want to make it big. And I don't know about half these guys, but I feel like they're defunct. Never heard of them. Never heard of them. So our logos, we start out with LGF, Lionsgate Films, big corporation. You know, they picked it up. They're going to distribute it. Of course, they're going to be in there.
We know them. Yep.
Bob Yari Productions, who per what's her face? Yeah, per Kathy Schulman, producer, when she's like, I had a company called Bullseye Entertainment, and Bob Yari pretty much bought half the company. Apparently, he has a production company because the next logo we get is Bob Yari Productions. Then we get hit with Dej, DEJ Productions. Never heard of this.
Who are you, Dej?
4th logo is Bullseye Entertainment for Miss Kathy Schulman over here. Then we get into the credits. So if you missed the logos, maybe you were coming in from getting your popcorn in the theater. Don't worry. In text, they're going to say Lionsgate Films and Bob Yari Productions, ampersand, DEJ Productions present. Next slide. A Blackfriars Bridge and Harris Company production. Where were their logos? Hello.
Ain't got them.
Followed by an Apollo Pro Screen. Those 3 words are all one word. I've never heard of this company. Don't know if they're around. Production. Next title card. A Bullseye Entertainment production. They're the one with a logo.
There we go.
Next credit. A film by Paul Haggis. And then we get into that first credit of Sandra Bullock, who was probably in the movie the least amount of everybody in this movie. So this is my nitpick. I hate when, and I'm just imagining it just got the Oscar buzz and they're like, we got to throw our logo on it. Make sure people
all
know
the
us.
logos.
It's like, no one knows you.
All the
no
logos.
one knows you. I don't even know who Blackfriars Bridge is or a Harris Company. Where were you guys?
It didn't even have a logo. Sounds like a shell company. It sounds like some money laundering happening.
So when Bob Yari was like going through those settlements, they didn't include them in the credits. So I'm wondering retroactively, did they include them into the front end credits with that logo and the title? I don't know.
It's a good point. Maybe that was part of like a settlement.
Stupid. Okay. Nick, kick us off in this movie. Where are we?
Well, let's get into the movie. As our log line says, we are in Los Angeles. And we're going to get introduced to two of our characters. There's a lot of them, so try and keep up. We have Detective Graham Waters and his partner, Rhea. Now, they're going to get into a crash. If you were getting into this movie being like, where's my car crashes? You got him, friend. There's a lot in this movie. And they get in a car crash with Kim Lee.
Mexicans don't know how to drive. She blink too fast.
I'm sorry. You don't see my brake lights.
Ma'am.
Maybe you see over steering wheel. You brake too.
Ma'am.
Mexican, I call immigration on you. Look what you do, my car.
Officer, can you please write down your report how shocked I am to be hit by an Asian driver?
Ma'am.
Now, if you're wondering, wow, is this a social commentary on racism? Don't worry, friend. You're going to find that out in the first few minutes of this film. Instant racism coming out of the gates.
Yep, we're starting out with a racial tension at a 10. Call it racial tension. And we know that because we have Don Cheadle, Jennifer Esposito, and this actress who is playing Kim Lee. So we got, Asian, Latina, Black, and immediately they're just at each other's throats. And they keep saying this thing, Blake lights. Kim Lee's like, I didn't see your Blake lights. And Jennifer Esposito's like, oh, you didn't see my Blake lights? I was confused because, the stereotype is that when you're non-English speaking, they substitute the L's for R's. But in this case, they're substituting the R's for L's, which I thought was such a groundbreaking decision by Haggis. I was like, wow, that's innovative.
It should have been brake rights.
I didn't want to say it. If we were doing this correctly, it would have totally been brake rights.
Should have been brake rights. Yeah.
So Detective Graham Waters, he finds this dead person, and we are starting in media res because we're going to rewind 48 hours. We're going back in time, just like Back to the Future, our franchise of the year. Gun store scene, Nick. This starts out super fucking hot. We did not stutter. Racism is here, baby, because
it's
we
here
have
to
this.
Stay. It's not going anywhere. Get ready.
I think we have first generation Persian American and Persian immigrant. So I guess they're Iranian. So there's a Persian guy trying to purchase a handgun, and this gun store owner is having none of it because he hits him with the Osama, he hits him with the jihad, and he says mud huts.
Yo, Osama, plan the jihad on your own time. What do you want?
Are you making insult at me?
Am I making insult at you? Is that the closest you can come to English?
Yes, I speak English. I'm American citizen.
You're liberating my country, and I'm flying 747s into your mud huts and incinerating your friends. Get the fuck out of my...
No, you get the fuck!
Come on. Get out!
And I'm like, how dare you disrespect my boy, Sean Tube, who plays Farhad in this movie. Or as I know him as Yinsen, because he is our third Iron Man actor. He's that guy who was stuck in the cave with Tony Stark. When Tony Stark made that suit in a cave. Out of a box of scraps.
With a box of scraps.
So Sean Tube's in this. There's a lot of great actors in this. And I can't say enough about the performances in this movie. But we're just really outward with the racism. If you didn't understand it from the stereotype of Asian people can't drive in that introductory scene, and Don Cheadle's line of
any real city, you walk, you brush past people bump into you. In LA, nobody touches you. We're always behind this metal and glass. I think we miss that touch so much that we crash into each other just so we can feel something.
We're like, oh.
I mean, just terrible writing.
Best screenplay at the Oscars, everybody.
Best screenplay.
Best fucking screenplay.
Well, James, if you want some heavy hitting acting here, we're going to have our boys Anthony and Peter. These are our two friends that we're going to get introduced to next. So Anthony and Peter are two young black men. I don't want to screw up their names. Anthony is played by Ludacris. And
I don't think you can screw up Ludacris.
Yeah. And Peter is Lorenz Tate. I did recognize both of them, but I was like, just like who's who with the names. So we have Anthony and Peter.
Peter is Lorenz Tate, and I just got to go on record. I don't think I've ever met a black person named Peter.
No.
There's Anthony Davis and there's Anthony Anderson. I'm like, all right, Anthony's covered. But Peter?
Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, and just freaking watch that like out of the very sparse listeners we have, maybe there's a Black Peter out there, and he's gonna call me out, be like, "Hey, asshole, my name's Peter, and I'm Black, and if I see him, I'm gonna take him out for a drink."
Well, our boy Luda is very upset as I leave this diner. It's the worst service he's ever had. He said, "I took an hour and a half to get spaghetti. Do you think white people would wait an hour and a half to get spaghetti? This waitress was refilling everyone's coffee. They didn't get ours." And his boy's like, "I don't drink coffee," or like, "You don't drink coffee," and I said I didn't want any. So like, what's the deal? Who's like, "That's not the point." This is when we see DA Rick Cabot walk by with his wife, Sandra Bullock. And as she sees the two young black men, she gets a little closer to her husband, and Luda notices and says, "You see that? You see that white lady? You know, she's scared of us. We're the only black guys here in this area, and they treat us differently. You know, they're scared of us." His buddy says, "We're not scared." And Luda says, "Why do you think that is?" And if you think to yourself, man, these black guys are being really maligned because they're not criminals. They're just trying to be part of this society here. His boy says, "Because we have guns?" Luda says, "Yeah." And they just run up to Brendan Fraser, D.A. Cabot, and his wife, Sandra Bullock, and just carjack the shit out of them. And I'm like, well, if your point here, Mr. Haggis, was to say, wow, these young black men should not be viewed as criminals, you kind of defeated your point there, guy, because these two young black men are super criminals.
I did like the initial reveal, the juxtaposition of Luda. He kind of is like a pseudo street Malcolm X, you know, just like kind of just spitting like, you know, "Oh, you see this, you see that, this is wrong, this is wrong." And Peter is kind of like, "There's nothing wrong. You're looking at it too closely." But then, yeah, they don't explain it in the movie like, "Oh, we have to do this to get by." It's just, they just do bad things, which is, I think, where the problem is. So I think if they explored the "I do this because I have to survive" aspect, it would have been a little bit more palatable, but just nothing there.
No, it's just straight up, hey, two young black men are carjacking white people. And you're like, yeah, you are just perpetuating white people's fear that they're going to get carjacked by two young black kids. So good job there, friends. Great job, Haggis. You're killing it. Best screenplay, my guy.
Best screenplay, by the way.
After this incident, I have another issue. Our DA Cabot is mad that he got carjacked, not because of the carjacking itself, but for political reasons. So he goes, well, if I come out and tell everybody and say this is incorrect, then I'm going to come out as tough on crime. I'm going to lose the black vote. And if I don't come out tough on crime, I'm going to lose the white vote. As if coming out against crime is some affront to black Americans. As if black Americans are sitting there being like, "What, you don't approve of crime? I'm not voting for you." What? Haggis, what are you talking? Like, this is the most implicitly racist thing. Talk about a guy who wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks, "I have to write this because I need to be important." This is like white savior complex, 110%. As a guy who doesn't consider himself politically correct, like, this is trash. That is so, I mean, it is absolutely offensive. We'll keep going.
Best screenplay, by the way.
That whole concept to me of like, oh, black people won't like me if I hate crime. Like, you think just black people are into crime? What kind of sick, twisted world do you live in, dude?
This is the problem when this movie is written by a white Canadian guy trying to write
Canadian?
about a melting. He's Canadian.
Son of a bitch. I hate him more now.
Hey, Canadians are nice.
They're nice. It's all anybody can say. We don't say they're smart.
Unless they commit sexual assault. Then they're on the naughty list.
Yeah, this is not a good Canadian.
This is a bad Canadian. And I think that's where a lot of faults are going to come into play when it's just a white guy writing this. And I can write a story like this as much as I want to. I'm not going to understand the perspective of other people's experiences as good as they will. So it's either going to come out phony or like the shit's going to come through the cracks one way or another. And here, it's just bad writing.
I mean, if you're writing this movie, if you're writing any movie, like we talk about this all the time, subtlety is king. Like, show me, don't tell me. And you're just going to come out and say it. If I'm a white guy coming out against crime, then the black community won't like me. Like,
Well, that's exactly what happens with this next scene, which I really can't stand with Sandra Bullock and Brendan Fraser, because Sandra Bullock goes on this rant about how, oh, I felt scared that there was 2 black people and I should feel bad that I should hug my husband and I don't feel safe, but I should have trusted my instincts because that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, Michael Pena, who plays Daniel, is a locksmith. He's changing the locks because I guess they got carjacked. And I guess they have their keys. And then so she goes on a whole outwardly expressive rant about how there's a Mexican guy. He has a shaved head. He has tattoos, and so she labels him a gangbanger and says he's going to sell the house key to his homies, and we're going to get robbed. There's just a lot of just over the top, on the nose dialogue of I'm racist because this is my exact thoughts right now. And it comes up throughout 95% of the scenes, and I can't stand it. The dialogue is written so poorly.
This is where, when you were talking about the interview that Haggis did, where I was sticking it to liberals about, you don't know what racism is. It's like, dude, you are that guy. You're the guy. Let's be Sergeant John Ryan, James.
Ugh. Okay, so this is Matt Dillon. Where's Matt Dillon been, by the way? I feel like I never see that guy. He's a super douche. So he pulls over this couple, which is going to be TV director Cameron Thayer and his wife. This is Terrence Howard and Tanda Wade Newton.
Maine. Friend of the show.
Terrence Howard, Maine. Friend of the show out of 4 brothers. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Yeah, lots of friends of the show. So Terrence Howard was totally getting a road blowy, and Matt Dillon pulls over his car. It's actually the same exact car at the Lincoln Navigator, which is what Ludacris and Lorenz Tate jacked from Sandra Bullock and Brendan Fraser. And they're looking for the stolen car. And then Ryan Felipe, who was very much prominent on screen in the 2000s, haven't seen a whole lot of him lately. He was kind of the up and coming heartthrob, you can say, like the young cop. And so he's Officer Hansen, and he says, this is not the right car. They wouldn't be driving around Studio City. And Matt Dillon's character just sees this car is driven by a couple of black folks. And
instead of stopping by Blockbuster to get some obscure Swedish film,
Norwegian,
my man's getting some road dough. Hell yeah.
They pull them over, and Sergeant Ryan goes ahead and he just starts feeling up Tanda Wade Newton and is real rapey and is obviously super racist. And I think it's probably one of the better played out scenes because it is a lot more like action and you're saying a lot with what's happening on screen. We're not outwardly saying, hey, you can't, why are you groping my wife? Is this because I'm black? Yes, it's because you're black. There's none of that. It's a lot of like, oh wow, like this is intense and this is
a power play. It's
traumatizing. Yeah, it's awful. So that happens and it makes Officer Hansen super uncomfortable with his grapey partner, who's also racist. Matt Dillon, Officer Ryan's, he's the forbidden rapist racist. He has both the P and the C.
The combo.
The forbidden combo.
He's a gracist and a grapist. Tragic. So yeah, Hansen wants to transfer out of Ryan's partnership because he's like, I don't want to be a part of this. But then we have this whole problematic scene or whole problematic situation happening when he wants to transfer, because at this point, the LAPD, they look out for their own. You don't want to accuse a fellow officer of being grapey or gracie. And James, tell me about this. I'll call it a cover-up scene where they don't want to get this Officer Ryan's in trouble.
Yeah, so Ryan Felipe comes in, Officer Hansen. He comes in actually to the lieutenant's office, who is Keith David, who's also a friend of the show from The Thing.
Yep.
I actually like this scene because it had a lot more of reading in between the lines as opposed to outwardly explaining what's happening.
Keith David's a great actor.
Keith David is amazing. Yeah, he's incredible. He has a super small part in this movie, and I think we've loved him in every single thing we've seen him in so far.
Absolutely.
And he sells his part very well, and I think it's one of the better scenes in the movie because, to summarize it, Hansen comes in, he says, hey, I want a new partner because he's racist, and he's an asshole, but he doesn't want to stir up trouble. The lieutenant says, oh, so you don't mind if there's a racist prick on the force, you just don't want him in your car. And Hansen says, oh, I'm gonna cross my arms and put on my big boy pants. He says, if you need me to go on record, sir, I will. And the lieutenant says, great, can't wait to read the report. And then Hansen cowards and says, oh, what if I say it's just for personal reasons? And then the lieutenant kind of snaps back. He's like, so you're just going to make up a reason. Okay, we'll say that you need to ride in your own car because you fart a lot. And then Hansen's like, I'm not comfortable with that. And lieutenant ends the conversation by saying, I wouldn't be either. And you should understand how awkward that should be, just as how you should understand how hard a black man has to work to get to where he is in, quote, a racist organization like the LAPD, and how easily that could be taken away. A couple things here, Nick. I have 3 things here. One, this is great, just like back and forth of Keith David, I think, was hinting at, or his character was hinting at, that he's had to work hard in the position he's got to. And he's a black man, obviously, in this movie.
Oh, just in this movie?
Just in this movie.
Okay.
And Ryan's was actually under his supervision as a lieutenant. So what I got from this conversation was that he was afraid he might lose his position if he called out a 17-year veteran on the force who's a white guy as a racist, and they would maybe conspire against him. He'd lose his job. So then when Hansen comes to him, he says, oh, great. Like, if it comes from a white guy, people will believe it and it'll have a lot more weight to it if you call him out as a racist. And then Hansen kind of backpedals and says, maybe, I don't know. I just, white privilege. I don't want to do this. And then lieutenant's like, all right, we'll just say you fart a lot, kid. Because if you don't have the nuts to sack up and call this guy out because you're in a position of power, it's going to carry a whole lot more weight. Then great. So that's what I took away from it. It was like, oh, this scene has me thinking. It has me thinking of like, we're not just outwardly saying what's going on in the scene. It's the dialogue is not exactly what it is.
We were talking about this pre-recording, but like that right there is the racism that actually matters, right? What happens behind closed doors, decisions that are made, personnel decisions.
The subtlety.
It's not people yelling slurs in the middle of the street. Like,
you don't see me jihading your mud shacks.
Yeah. Unless you're down in Jackson, Mississippi or something, like that's not what your life is like. Like, racism happens at a very granular level. It doesn't happen out in the open. So that's why this scene, I agree with you 100%. That's why this scene hits home, because you're saying, oh yeah, this is an actual real life example of like racial biases and somebody backing down from the right thing because he's scared to do that. Those are the real life decisions that people make. I'm not going to complain to HR. I'm not. That's what real life America can relate to.
And that's what we we go through with like this whole Black Lives Matter movement and people being passively, they call it passive racism when you just let shit slide and you don't call it out. The whole ideology is like, you gotta be anti-racist. You have to call it out. So this was a really good scene, I thought. And Keith David did a really good job acting in it.
For me, I've never heard somebody out in public call somebody a slur, like to their face.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It's like they're really beating you over the head with the slurs and the outwardly racism that doesn't happen. This is the kind of racism that happens in the real world. It happens in these conversations. You have to read between the lines.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't even see this in real life. So it's like, if you're telling people to look out for people screaming slurs, everybody knows that. Like, yeah, don't do that. Like, that's not a crazy thing to tell people. You're not giving me anything new in 2005 of, hey, if somebody's being openly racist in public, say something. Most people I know, almost everyone I know, would say something. It's these decisions that happen in like the little moments. So I agree. This is one of the better scenes. It's one of the better scenes that happens in this, if not the best scene that happens for me in this movie.
It's like this movie, before I move on to my point 2 and 3, it's like this movie, the instructions were to the characters, hey, we're going to drop you in Los Angeles and just pretend like you've never seen anybody outside of your race before yesterday. And the assignment is to be aggressively hostile. Go.
Again, Los Angeles. You could have made this take place in like Dallas or something with a little
Oklahoma
more deep-seated.
City. I don't know.
Oklahoma City. This could be Birmingham, Alabama, right? Where there's a little more open, like stuff like, but we're talking like Los Angeles in 2005. It's like, I don't think anyone was screaming like slurs.
Point number 2, Keith David, friend of the show, not from The Thing, but also from Volcano. And
yes.
Nick, point number 3, I have a conspiracy theory. This is in the same universe as Volcano because that also had Don Cheadle and Keith David. Keith David played a lieutenant in Volcano. And if you didn't listen to our Volcano episode, shame on you, you should. But that was about a volcano that erupted under the La Brea tar pits and was a natural disaster for the city of Los Angeles. And there was this shoehorned in subplot of social justice and racial equality. And I'm thinking this is definitely tied, definitely in the same universe. I'm thinking all the volcanic gases got to Don Cheadle's head, got to Keith David's head, and they forgot who they were and they got new jobs. And Keith David stayed a lieutenant, but Don Cheadle became a detective.
Yes.
So I'm thinking apparently we're so racist in LA in the 90s.
Don Cheadle got a promotion for all the good work he did during Volcano.
Didn't he work with with Tommy Lee Jones and like the
transportation department, like with the subways, like the geological.
Was it subways? Yeah.
Well, it was the geological, but like he was dealing with the subways.
Were they like earthquake watchers?
Yeah.
Earthquake. There were earthquake cops. Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, no.
So he got a promotion.
Crash, same universe.
I'm into this. I'm super into this. Okay.
Moving on.
Let's get back to this universe because our Sergeant Ryan, we're going to try and give him a little bit of humanity. We're going to take care of his super dying dad. And we're like, oh man, yeah, that's tough. There's probably a lot of stress on him taking care of his father. Probably has some daddy issues. His daddy's dying. But he gets on the phone with the health insurance company, and there's a black girl on the phone, and our homeboy's going to be super racist on the phone because Sergeant Ryan doesn't know. It's not like, so here's the thing. If you had a cop on the force who like had subtle racism here and there, you'd be like, if there was someone who was this outwardly racist. This is not the 70s. This is not the 60s. We're talking
not the
2035. We're talking 05. And Paul Haggis is like, yeah, there's cops like this in the middle of LA, the middle of the second largest metropolitan area in the United States.
I would say there is cops like this, but they are not this outwardly expressive.
Yeah. Also, all of these calls are recorded. You'd be like, wow, sir, we are dropping you from the insurance because you may not be this right. Like this doesn't have
so this is Loretta Devine, the actor, and she plays Shaniqua Johnson. And first foremost, I feel like Shaniqua was just like the go-to black woman name in the 2000s. Like we're
it's like a black woman's name from an SNL skit. It's just Shaniqua.
And then so Ryan's is like, oh, what's your name? And then Loretta Devine says, Shaniqua Johnson. And Ryan's like, Shaniqua, big fucking surprise. And it's like, okay. Okay, guy. Later on, we'll get a scene with him and the insurance broker in person to person. And he explains that his dad hired a bunch of black workers to work at his company. And then affirmative action kicked in and he lost all of his workers and he lost his business. And because of that, he hates black people now.
Which also doesn't make a lick of sense, but we'll carry on.
Moving on. We're going to rejoin good old Tony and Pete, aka Anthony and Peter. They're going to actually hit this Asian dude with a car, with the Lincoln
Navigator.
Yeah. So they hit this guy. They run over this guy.
Homeboy's dragging under the car.
Yeah, they dragged him like 50 feet and they get out and they check underneath the car. And they say this in the movie. They say there's a Chinaman underneath the vehicle. And my wife looked at me and said, a Chinaman? I've never heard of that. And I said, well, that's because you're a good person. You probably didn't watch South Park and offensive stuff growing up and you're wholesome. Because I haven't heard this word in a long time. Taking a poll from you, Nick, is this realistic? This whole movie's dialogue is unrealistic. But would people, I don't know.
So
it just seems like they're trying really hard to be racist.
Yeah. I've told you the story. I've told you the story.
Here we go.
My great grandmother, survivor of Hitler's Nazi Germany. She was 100% German, survivor of the country. and came to America. Great American, loved America, loved everything about it. It's not necessarily a racist term. It's an old school term that is like we just don't call Chinese people that anymore.
It's like when they say like Oriental.
Yeah, like exactly. So like my great grandmother would say Oriental, or she referred to one Chinese restaurant owned by a Chinaman who she loved with all her heart. She would tip this guy $100 every time she went to his restaurant, but referred to him as a Chinaman. And that's just a
hey,
word.
Kids, we're going to go see the Chinaman.
Yeah. And that word dies with that generation and just should. So like it felt really forced. I don't think there's a lot of black youth seeing Chinese Americans going, hey, Chinaman. I
would bet my life savings there's never been a black Peter who said the word Chinaman.
I'm with you. I'm 110% with you.
So they run over this guy and you're like, oh shit, this guy almost died. They drop him off at a hospital and we're like, all right, cool. They're not complete scumbags. Now let's catch up with Waters and Rhea. They're going to argue while they're in bed. Don Cheadle, Waters picks up his phone. It's his mom. His mom's like, have you found your brother? We're like, okay, side plot. And he says, I got to go. I'm having sex with a white woman. And Rhea gets up and is like all pissed off. She cut off the sex. And he's like, look, I would have said you were Mexican, but I knew saying a white woman would have pissed her off more. And then she's like, I'm Puerto Rican. And
I don't know. It really felt like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Felt like I'm a proud, and you're like,
shout out Carmen.
Yeah, it felt very much that way.
She's like basically, she's like, hey, I'm not Mexican. Don Cheadle's like, well, who told all your people to park the cars on the front lawn? It's like, whoa, like, why are we going here, man? Aren't you guys friends? Why are you guys dicks? Why is everyone so racist?
Yeah, well, it's funny because they're like in a relationship, Waters, and then it's just they get into an argument and he goes, oh, race. Like nobody does that. Nobody just goes straight into, wow, we're having a disagreement. I'm going to bring race into the equation. And this is one of those things, and I'll bring it up later, but it's just a very Hollywood thing of like, oh, this is what racism is. It's a very sheltered theater kid version of racism that it has to be this out in the open thing. It's like nobody gets into an argument with their Hispanic girlfriend and starts yelling slurs at them. Sure, it has happened, and yes, there are terrible people, but that is not a common occurrence. It is not a everyday thing that anybody might run into. So if I'm watching this movie, and like you said, you're watching this movie as a high schooler, and you're like, wow, I don't know the world enough yet. I guess this happens. And then you watch it as an adult and go, this never happened.
This is stupid. This is people don't talk like this.
You have a ton of Hispanic friends. I have a ton of Hispanic friends. We know a lot of the same Hispanic people that you've worked with.
Shout out Albert and Daniel.
Shout out Bert, Daniel, like just ton of good dudes. And they would probably say, yeah, I've never, that's never happened to me. At work, no one's been like, oh, you messed up, and then yelled slurs at me. Like, because that's not how people operate.
Nick, let's hit a climax here with another crash because Officer Ryan's, is it Ryan or Ryan?
I think it's
Ryan's
Ryan.
or Ryan.
I said Ryan's, but it's Ryan.
Oh, all right. Well, I've been calling full Ryan's this whole time. Yeah, it's just Ryan. Whatever, fuck him. So he comes up on a traffic stop. There's a smoking car up ahead. A car's upside down. There's gasoline. There's potential of an explosion. And lo and behold, this is Christine Tandaway Newton hanging upside down. And he goes to save her, and she's all traumatized because the last time they saw each other, he was pulling a haggis.
Yeah, because there's only 12 people in this fucking town.
4 million people in LA, by the way.
And the same 12 people keep fucking crashing into each other. So here we are.
Big explosion. She's in the screenplay. I think it says Christine looks over her shoulder full of rage, but also gratefulness. Now it's just like, eye roll. This is so corny.
If you're going to eye roll there's the next scene is about this whole thing with the DA's office with racism and internal affairs, and they're investigating racism, but also covering it up. Dude, I don't know. I am so numb to the racism in this movie at this point. Like, I just don't care. I do not care about any racism that's happening in this movie anymore. I am so over it. I just assume that two people of the different race are in the same room. Racism's happening.
It's coming.
It's just a foregone conclusion at this point. I just don't even care anymore. I'm like, all right, yep, racism is about to happen. Move on. Let's go. Yep, they hate each other. Color of the skin, couple slurs, tension. Next scene. It's predictable.
Anthony and Peter try to turn in the original Lincoln Navigator to the Chop Shop guy, but Chop Shop guy says you don't watch Discovery Channel or CSI. They catch people when there's blood on the cars, and I don't need this mess. Take this car out of here. I can't buy it off you. So they're like, let's go get another Lincoln Navigator.
Back on their bullshit.
As we know, that would be Terrence Howard, man, who is riding solo because he's having marital problems with Christine.
Because she got groped. She got graped by Ryan.
The racist. And they roll up and they pull guns out, just, back on their hood rat shit. And they see it's Terrence Howard and they're like, oh shit, a black guy? Oh, I kind of feel conflicted. And then the cops show up and then there's this chase. And Terrence Howard is driving. Ludacris is in the car. Lorenz Tate dips. He's out. We're not going to see him till the end. And we get this scene with Officer Hansen, small town. So Cameron grabs the gun after he beats the shit out of Ludacris. He actually goes pretty hard because
he does go hard on him.
Cameron has a gun in his face and he just says fat. Like he's going off that upper middle class rage. Like his wife left him, called him a cuck basically, and said, "You're not a man. You didn't stand up for me." And he's like, "Shit." This is guy on the brink of a divorce, and he just takes his rage out on
a different kind of rage. I'm sure
criminal Anthony. Yeah,
I hope I never go through that, but I'd love to experience that level of not giving a fuck. Like there has to be a special level of just rage and not caring.
This was another kind of like, there's something here in the scene. I didn't like that he grabbed the gun from Ludacris, and it looked like it was about to be a suicidal move. But basically, he gets out of the car when there's 3 cop cars chasing after the speeding vehicle. Not the right move. And Officer Hansen's playing like being the good guy, trying to talk him down. And Cameron's kind of like I said, a little bit almost kind of suicidal, and just says like, "Hey, walk away." And we're like, "Oh, Officer Hansen, good guy." And then Cameron gets out of that situation, drops off Anthony on Ventura Boulevard, and we're going to move on to the next little tiny story that we're going to weave together in the script.
Well, our Officer Hampson is driving home on his route. He just had a very stressful shift. He's got this his partner's a racist going on in the back of his head. He's been talking to internal affairs. He has this whole situation. Like, my man is stressed out. My man needs a stiff drink and a Thai massage with a happy ending is what my guy needs. But instead, on his way home, he's going to see a hitchhiker.
Who is he? Justin Tucker?
Hey-oh. And we see Peter, right? Our guy. And so there's something Peter been doing even with his boy Luda, where when they're driving their car, he puts his statue of like a Catholic saint. I forget which saint it is. But he's like, for good luck, watches over them. It's a safety thing. Is it St. Peter?
No.
Okay. I was like, that would be a little too on the nose.
I think it's St. Luda.
So St. Luda's there to watch over them. He's going to lick you from your head to your toes in safety. So Hansen picks up Peter. Peter reaches into his pocket to get his little figurine out, his Catholic saint, to put on the dashboard like he always does. Well, Hansen does not like this movement, and he pulls out his gun real quick.
Dead.
And shoots Peter dead. He was not playing around. Now, as a man, if I ever picked up a hitchhiker, I would have a little more reserve, or I just wouldn't pick up hitchhikers.
Don't pick up hitchhikers.
If there was even an ounce of racism in me, I wouldn't pick up a black hitchhiker.
Well, but I hate this scene because up to this point, Officer Hansen has been such like a stand-up guy and been he's been like against racism. And then all of a sudden, like there was a scene earlier when Matt Dillon was like, oh, so like, you decided to not roll with me. Okay. I'm gonna roll with Garcia. And he says, hey, you know what? You think you know me, you think I'm a bad guy, but give it enough time and you might feel the same. And apparently enough time is that night, because he develops prejudices from that one conversation with Matt Dillon in the parking lot. And it just, he voluntarily picks this guy up, and Peter's just kind of laughing, and Officer Hansen's like, what the hell's so funny? He's like, oh, nothing, man. It's all good. And then like he reaches in his pocket and just pulls out a gun, shoots him. I'm like, this guy had a 180 in character for no reason, for absolutely no reason at all.
Hansen was the only guy who had the opportunity in this movie to have a character arc, and his character arc chose violence. Chose murdering a black guy in his car. Picking up a black guy. It's basically abduction and murder. As far as the law is concerned, you abducted this man and then murdered him.
And he super covers it up.
Oh, talk to me about that one, James.
Well, so he shoots Peter. Hey, Peter. And he just burns his car on the side of the road. And I'm like, is that not going to come up later? Are there no repercussions? Are they going to say, hey, this guy died on the route you take home from work? Oh, that's weird. Your car is burnt. Oh, you didn't report that?
It's literally on fire.
Okay.
So James, real quick, this is one of those situations where you could have really made a good choice as a director or a writer and brought Keith David's character back, Lieutenant Dixon, to investigate this and look at him and basically give him a good judgmental eye of, you're just the same white guy as Officer Ryan is. And there actually would have been some weight to that. But no, it's just an unexplained car fire and a dead black guy.
Like, just gonna burn my car, get rid of the evidence, and I'm good.
No consequences, no follow-up. Here we are. Like, there's so many little scenes you could put in this movie where you're like, oh, wow, consequences. Oh, wow, this person feels bad. Oh, there's some repercussions. No, it's just shit happens. Here, I'm filming it. Thanks, Haggis.
That's the end of Peter and Officer Hansen. Let's catch up with Anthony. Nick, what is he up to?
Well, real quick, Waters and Rhea pull up to this situation, and there's this whole subplot where Peter is actually Waters, Don Cheadle's brother. And it's like, oh, who could have seen that one coming? Oh, I had no idea that all these stories were super interconnected, and there's 12 people in Los Angeles as far as Paul Haggis is concerned, you fucking idiot. So Anthony is a menace who can't be stopped. So without his homeboy Peter, he's still going to be carjacking. So he's going to carjack this van successfully. But there are Cambodian immigrants chained up in the back, James.
I did not see this coming. This was the biggest plot twist of the movie. You thought you felt bad for Choi, who got ran over and dragged 100 feet by a Lincoln Navigator? I don't feel bad for Choi at all. He's a piece of shit.
He's a human trafficker. Along with our first gal, Kim Lee, who got crashed into. She's in on it too. Son of a bitch. So
because she didn't see the Blake lights.
Everybody who we've accused of being a piece of shit preeminently because of their race actually turned out to be a piece of shit. So really the moral of the story is like, yeah, stereotyping's a good thing because all of these people are bad people. That is what Paul Haggis is telling me right now. So the van is Kim Lee's, and her husband, Mr. Choi, who got dragged under this Lincoln Navigator, have been selling these Cambodians. And when our boy Anthony finds out,
this was the wildest ending to me.
Our chop shop owner, who's like, I can't buy that Lincoln Navigator because there's fucking blood on it, is like, hey, this guy sees an opportunity.
This creepy white van full of trafficked Cambodians who are chained up in the back of the car.
My guy sees a business opportunity. He goes, hey,
bro made a business decision.
I'll give you $500 per Cambodian. And Anthony struggles with this for a minute and goes like, nah, I can't do that. So he just drops him off in Chinatown. Whether or not they're going to get into big trouble there, I don't know.
Shout out to last episode. So this happens. This happens in real life. Trafficking is an issue. I don't know who's...
It's an awful thing.
Yeah, I don't sincerely, I don't know what the market is like. I don't know who's buying them. So for this guy who has stolen cars delivered to him and he sells out car parts. What the fuck does he know about selling human beings?
He's about to learn.
I got some yeah, I've never gotten to human trafficking, but hey, maybe I'll give it a shot. Maybe I'll sell these Cambodians for $500 a pop. It's like, what the fuck do you know, chop shop guy?
I'm a chop shop guy. I'm into illegal shit.
I'll dabble.
Like, I feel like you have to, like, the jump from I'm going to cut up some stolen cars and sell their parts to, like, I will buy that human being is such a
I will
jump.
commit slave trade. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna actively participate in the slave trade is insane to me. Insane.
Absolutely cherry on top of best screenplay, by the way.
And then James, tell me Ludacris's last line as he dropped off these Cambodians into some big trouble into Little Chinatown.
So Luda, Tej Parker, Fast and Furious style, drives up this van to Chinatown. And he's like, Cambodians are probably Chinese. I'll drop them off in Chinatown. They'll do great there. Gives one of them $40 and says, hey, you're free now. He doesn't go to like the cops or like immigration and say, hey, this is happening. He just drops them all off in Chinatown. And out of our principal actors, our main characters, the final line spoken in the film by Ludacris is, quote, dopey fucking Chinaman. Best screenplay, by the way.
Best screenplay, by the way. Now, to call it a real thing, this happens a lot at the ports of Los Angeles where people from East Asia get on a shipping container, they get stowed away, and then they think they're going to make their way to America. They get handcuffs slapped on them, they get thrown in vans, and they get human trafficked. It's a thing. To just say like, oh yeah, some black guy carjacked a car they were in and then set them free, said dopey fucking Chinaman, happy ending, is absolutely insane.
So we're almost at the end of this because there is kind of like not uplifting music, but the mannerisms of Ludacris is
and
like he's like he's
hopeful, yeah, hopeful for today. Yet this music and you.
That would have made this movie way better.
We're
if
about
we got
to
a
hit
little,
it.
Coach Carter montage at the end.
Absolutely, but we don't get that.
We get Anthony smiling like I just did a good ass thing letting those guys free in Chinatown with no fucking idea of what to do.
I just released some illegal Cambodians into Chinatown.
In them streets, there's about to be some big ass trouble. And then we kind of end on like a joke because we have Shaniqua Johnson come back in the mix. Crash. There's a car crash. There's a fender bender. And it ends with Shaniqua Johnson yelling at some Asian guy, reminiscent of the starting point of this movie. And when it crashed, we're going to end the movie on racism just as we started. And that is Crash. We hit credits. Nick, new tradition here. I don't know if I want you to take part in this too, but I need
to start doing it. Yeah.
Please start doing this because there's some good names out there because a new tradition is the funniest names we find in the credits. Nick, the sound mixer is Dick Van Dyke, Richard Van Dyke. I didn't know he did sound mixing. Richard Van Dyke on the mixer. Also, there's a person named Unsung Song, which sounds like it's UNSUN. So it's like sun, like this big ass star in the fucking space. So it's unsung, but it sounds like it's an unsung song. Like opposite of sing sing. It's unsung song.
Yeah, no songs being sung.
Jimmy Jew, Jue, just good old Jimmy Jew doing that. I think extras casting. I think is what he was.
That sounds like a racial slur. You yell at your friend like, "Hey there, Jimmy Jew."
One of the painters was named Philip Ryan. It's funny because there's a Ryan Felipe in this film.
Oh,
Thanapoom Sirapapungal is another name, and Felicia Flick, which I thought was a good old just a literate name. I want to point out not a funny name, but a familiar name. Another friend of the show I found in the credits. Carl Lumbly got a special thanks. Carl Lumbly, you'll remember as John Parker from The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Yes,
he gets a special thanks. Carl Lumbly, if you don't know, very successful actor. Been in many projects. He's actually coming up in by the time this episode comes out, Captain America Brave New World will already be out. He plays Isaiah Bradley, one of the original Super Soldier Serum patients in that movie. So shout out Carl Lumbly. I don't know why he got the special thanks for this movie, but I'll take a friendly face any day of the week.
Because this movie is as fictitious as the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension.
Buckaroo Banzai was way more believable. And Nick, let's get into some talking points here. Like I said, I watched this movie 10, 15 years ago, and I thought it was really good and groundbreaking. And like, oh, this is serious, and this is how people are in real life. This is bad. And now watching it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of dialogue that is awful. The story is just convoluted. It's confusing. There's not really much character arcs happening. So were there any scenes that worked? Anything in this movie for you? Any highlights if you had to?
Let me just make a broad statement first. The reason a lot of these scenes didn't work and didn't hold the power that they could have was we didn't get any character development. We've talked about this on this podcast plenty, where if you want me to care about a character, you got to develop them first. So, oh, this guy's a racist. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen a character arc come out of him. Hanson actually had a somewhat character arc, but then reverted to being a piece of shit. So that's like a bad character arc. But we did have one scene. We didn't go over this in plot talk. However, there was one scene in this movie where our boy, the locksmith, Daniel, played by Michael Pena, was being accused of stealing from a Middle Eastern guy's store. Middle Eastern man confronted him out in public, out on the sidewalk in front of his house. Very tense scene. Give me the money back. And Michael Pena's daughter ran out to protect him, jumped in front of him. And there was a solid 5-10 seconds where you thought this man had shot Michael Pena's daughter.
So I distinctly remember the scene. So how did you feel being a first time watcher? Were you like, oh shit, he just killed the daughter?
Yes, I thought this was going to be the heaviest point of the movie. We're like, wow,
yeah,
the racism has actually resulted in a death. And I know I know Peter had died by Hanson's hand in this, but that felt really forced and weird and odd. Like, this felt like the first time when someone was confronted, tensions rose, and
pretty sure they do a crazy dolly zoom on Michael Pena as he thinking his world has come crashing down. His daughter is dead in his arms.
He's yelling at his daughter to stay in the house, stay in the house. It's
super tense. Super tense.
She runs out of the house, and you're like, no, and it's really scenes like that hold a lot of power. But when everything leading up to that scene is just overt racism, it holds less power. And that's
also, she doesn't die, by the way, because in the beginning scene in the gun store with the guy being all super racist,
yeah,
and the Persian guy trying to buy a gun, his daughter says, "Give me the bullets in the red box," and then the gun store owner's like, "Do you know what those are?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I do." And we come to learn they're blanks. So she's like, I know my dad's never going to want it. My dad's not built for this, and I don't want him to actually kill anybody, so give me the blanks.
So it was the first scene where there was action consequence, heavy implications towards it. But at the same time, we never developed Daniel's character. We never developed that Middle Eastern store owner's character. So it felt out of place. That scene would work in any other movie. Where you had built up the tension, but really Haggis up to this point had basically told us racism's happening, get ready. And then we saw this scene and said, yep, racism's happening again. So it didn't hold the power it should have, but I thought that was a really good scene. Obviously, Michael Pena, we know on this podcast, a good actor, a great actor.
I love Michael Pena.
He's extremely underrated actor.
Yeah.
Deserves to be more than just that Hispanic guy in the movie that you're watching.
Which since this movie, as a silver lining, did get him more roles outside of his typecast. Because I forget, my favorite roles. He's like a random gangbanger in Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
When they're trying to get the dog. They're trying to get the dog to crap out the keys that the dog swallowed, and then they run up on these Latino gangbangers, and Michael Pena is one of them. I'm like. Michael Pena.
Shortly after this, he got a role in Shooter.
Oh yeah.
What was the one? Shit.
We got World Trade Center. He got
what was the one he did with Jake Gyllenhaal where he was a cop and it was all like body cam footage? End of Watch. I wanted to say so. I knew it was Watch, but End of Watch. Yeah, he got End of Watch, and he started getting taken seriously. He's a fantastic actor. He did great in that role. In this role here, it kind of pisses me off that he wasn't even invited to the Academy Awards there, and had to go sit by himself in the after parties. So,
and like a watch party.
Yeah. So that to me was the most powerful scene. What sucks is that it was a powerful scene with no build up to it. And fuck you, Paul Haggis, for not giving my guy Michael Pena the proper character arc to make me care more about this scene. What about you? What scene did you look at and be like, wow, of all the scenes, of all like the forced dialogue and shit, this thing worked?
Yeah, so I touched upon the Keith David scene. I thought that was one of the standout scenes that actually worked well. A scene we didn't bring up actually has a small cameo by Tony Danza, who plays a movie producer, and Terrence Howard, I think, is a director. And he's directing this show, and Tony Danza pulls him aside and says, hey, you know, so-and-so changed his lines. And he's talking about a African-American actor who, I guess, you know, you could say, quote unquote, speaks correctly, if you want to put it that way. And he says like, oh, his line was this, but he's supposed to say it, you know, a little bit more black. So, you know, we already have an intelligent one on the show, and he should be the funny one. Essentially, is it's not the exact wording, but it's kind of paraphrasing. And Terrence Howard looks at him like, oh, like this is wrong, but like I feel uncomfortable to challenge this because like you're above me and like you're a white guy and I'm a black guy. And then he has to reluctantly go up to the young black actor and say like, hey, like, you know, after I just said cut, we got it, print, this is perfect. And then Tony Danza's like, yeah, you know, like actually we got to do it. So that's passive racism at work. And the scene works really well because that is relatable. That happens every day. We don't see the people just berating people in the streets, calling them slurs after slurs after slurs, N-words, C-words, jihad, your mud shack. It's like, that's not the realistic part. It's like, this shit happens. So if the whole movie was like this, then it would be Oscar worthy. Then it would be, wow, this is a conversation starter. The whole movie is just outward dialogue of like, I'm mad at you because you're this color and I'm gonna call you this slur. Whereas like this one is realistic, it's relatable, it's grounded, and it worked. It was probably the best scene of this whole entire movie. Not because Tony Danza was in it, but just because it was actually believable. And like, you're not explaining to the audience why this is wrong. You're just reading body language. And this is the prime example in this movie of where it's actually showing you and it's not telling you.
Couldn't agree more. James. And that brings me to my only talking point, my one and only, and then we'll get into, you know, our wrap up here. But it's just a general question for you. So, James, if you want to tackle an important topic, such as race or some kind of phobia or some injustice that's happening in the world, if you don't have a good story, is it better just to leave it unsaid until someone who has a better vision comes along? Or is it worth it to try and fail miserably as Paul Haggis did? Like, is there any kind of virtue in him trying to come in and highlight racial tensions? Or would you rather somebody just say, hey, you don't have a good handle on this, leave it alone for somebody who has a better vision? And you know what? Maybe that takes 5 years, but it's better than what you're going to do.
That's a really good question. I think I would say what Paul Haggis, it all comes back to like intention versus impact. So I think the intention of this movie is really, they have good intentions. They're trying to get a good message across. They're trying to say like racism is bad. That's the intention. The messenger of the message is not the right messenger. And the impact you're leaving behind is like, yeah, you're trying to tell me that racism is bad and we shouldn't do it. But also you're just a privileged white guy from Canada and you don't actually relate to any of this. So you can't accurately depict this. So, I mean, it's going to start a conversation of some sorts, but I don't think that I feel like if you're really passionate about this subject, you got to seek help and make it a team effort. I don't think you just tackle it alone and say, I'm the person who can end racism. It's like when the NFL put all those slogans on the helmets. They're like, end
Stop
racism.
hate.
They're like, we did it. It's like, you didn't.
Good job, Roger
So-
Goodell.
I mean, I think it's important to address it. I don't think it's necessary. It's not like well, I don't know. I guess you can argue it's a step backwards in the conversation with this movie, but
So
he's
So not
trying.
not to cut you off there, but yeah,
No, go ahead. That's all I got.
What you said there at the end there is what resonates with me. So I'm like you said, the intention when you told me the story of I had a dream and I knew I had to do something important. That raises big red flags for me of I have to do something and racism's a big deal. So I'm just going to tackle that because I want to leave a legacy. That's a really shitty reason to tackle anything for your own legacy. I don't care what it is. Don't do that. Don't do that because you think you should do it because it's what you want to do. And then for me, this takes a huge step backwards in the conversation, like you were saying there at the end of your take there, because you went out there and put a product out there that said, yeah, stop this racism. And I don't know anybody in the world who doesn't disagree with the racism portrayed in this movie. So you're going to watch this and be like, well, yeah, I'm not that guy. Obviously, I'm not that guy. I don't berate black people on the phone. I don't yell racial slurs at people on the street. I don't do XYZ. So clearly I have no biases. It's like, but that's not what we're like, but that's not what we're talking about, Paul Haggis. Like, of course nobody partakes in the actions that you are portraying on the screen. Also, that what you're portraying on the screen is really bad. Like, oh wow, people are really judging these black kids. Like, that's really wrong. But also, these black kids are carjacking everybody. It's like, what do you do? What, Paul Haggis? Like, you've just, if I was an alien life form who came down and watched this movie and I knew nothing about humanity or the United States of America, my takeaway would be, yeah, I should racially profile everybody because all of these people are bad. That'd be my takeaway from this movie, because all the people who are being profiled end up being bad people. There's no like redemption story of, oh wow, this was a really good guy who really got the raw end of the stick. Like even our boy Pete, who got shot, like, it sucks he got shot. He shouldn't have got shot by Hanson in the car, but this guy is also carjacking people at gunpoint. So I have a really hard time feeling bad for him. So what are you doing, Haggis? Why are you not giving me a redeemable character to relate to? Yeah, sorry. That's my soapbox.
It's hard.
It's so
it's hard to
frustrating.
relate to the characters. It's hard to accept this as a coherent story. Because this whole entire movie just kind of seems like a bunch of instructional videos stitched together that HR sends you and says,
exactly.
What was racist about this clip?
Yes.
It's like it's too much on the nose of the message it's trying to get across. And the messenger is just a single person with a specific perception on life and racism in America, where it's like, it's not just your perspective. There's so many different perspectives you need to take into account. And you and what's his nuts, Nabisco, what was his name?
I thought it was Morisco. Is that not
Morisco? I don't know. The two white guys writing this movie, you can't tackle racism. You just can't do it. And just the fact that this won Best Picture over those other, I haven't seen those other movies. I haven't seen any of those movies besides Crash. I'm actually flabbergasted that this won Best Picture. I understand the controversy now. I totally get it. And I think it's a pander pick. I think it's Oscar bait. And this is exactly what we wanted to do with this podcast. We wanted to watch these Best Picture winners and really decide if they were worthy of Best Pictures. And I think when we get to our final review, we're going to say it was not.
Well, we'll see it. But first, James, before we get to those final reviews, we got to do one of our favorite things in the world, buddy. We got to do some mini pops.
Yes, it's time for Mini Pops. This is our awards, and this is on brand for our Oscars episode. It's all about Academy Awards and handing out Oscars. Nick, we're going to start out with the category we always start out with, which is the best weapon. We had a lot of guns in this movie. A gun did kill a guy, but we've had back-to-back guns to start off the year for best weapon from Back to the Future, from Big Trouble in Little China. We got to switch it up. And I think Peter, being a carjacker piece of shit, got out too easy by getting shot by Officer Hansen's off-duty handgun, which is why we think the Lincoln Navigator that totally fucked up Choi, who actually totally deserved it for being a human trafficker. I think it's better to get fucked up and in pain if you're a bad person, as opposed to just getting the easy way out of a bullet. So Lincoln Navigator, best weapon of Crash.
110%, my friend. Well, best weapon cannot stand alone. We have to go with our best fighter of this movie. And James, I think we both agree this is Cameron. It is Terrence Howard, man. Because this guy did not give a fuck when a gun was in his face.
He brought that upper class rage to them streets.
Yeah.
He beat the shit out of Ludacris. Ludacris had the upper hand, gun at his face, point blank, New Jack City.
It's the kind of rage you can only have from your wife being assaulted and then your wife blaming you, and then you go ahead and absolutely unleash all of that rage. That's what we're dealing with here. Yeah.
Yeah, Terrence Howard, man, fucked up Luda in them streets in like a cardigan or something. That's going to lead us to the next award of our Mini Pops, the third out of 4 awards, the MVC of this movie, most valuable character. I believe that we are just going to go with Daniel Michael Pena. He was the most valuable character in this movie. This movie was about racism and about people being racist, but he was the only one that wasn't racist. And I think that speaks volumes to this city of 12 people whose racist aggression is at a fucking 100 out of 10.
He wasn't racist. He was a good guy providing for his family, and he was the only person with some kind of redemption in this film. So, yeah, it is easily Daniel.
Shout out Michael Pena. Got paid $10,000 and wasn't invited to the Oscars, but we got you.
But James, our biggest piece of shit. So, James, obviously,
Nick,
this movie.
Nick, this is going to be the hardest decision.
Everyone.
Last week, we're like, bad guy is that evil 1,000-year-old wizard that abducts women and wants to marry them and drink their blood. Easy. This movie is full of garbage people. When this movie started, I said, gun store owner, biggest piece of shit. He's too crazy. And then we get to the next scene. We're like, okay, all right, we're carjacking fools. Maybe you're the biggest piece of shit. Okay, maybe Matt Dillon's the biggest piece of shit. We're like, oh, Officer Hansen, you're a good guy. Oh, you just killed a guy? You're the only person in this movie that killed a man? Maybe you're the biggest piece of shit. Fucking plot twist at the end. Choi? I think we need to have a discussion, Nick. He's a human trafficker.
Well, hold on. Let me talk to you real quick about what I'm thinking. So my first instinct was Officer Ryan, because as bad as racism is, I don't like sexual assault, and I think anybody who sexually assaults somebody, looking at you, Paul Haggis, you just need to get thrown off a bridge into rough waters with a bunch of sharks, because I have no sympathy for you. It's whatever's the most painful way to go. I want that for you, my friend. However, James, I have a nomination for you. So all of these people are racist, and we know their intentions. Their intentions is racism. I think one of the most dangerous people are the people who will just spring at the crime of opportunity. And the crime of opportunity in this movie is our chop shop owner who, having no experience in human trafficking, looks Anthony in the eye and says, yo, I'll give you $500 a piece for those Cambodians in the back of the van.
Dangerous.
Those are people I do not want in my society.
A lot of these people were predictable. I did not see that coming.
Chop Shop owner was like, whoa, what's happening here? Yo, oh, wait, whoa, wait a minute.
Oh, slaves? Hell yeah, let's go.
$500 a piece. Now look, this is me talking as a man who has never even dipped a pinky toe into the world of human trafficking. $500 seems cheap as fuck for a human being.
2004 prices, man.
Inflation's a bitch, but I'm telling you, like, I feel like you were lowballing for human lives. That just adds.
He really wanted those Cambodians.
So I got Chop Shop guy.
I have to agree. I mean, let's not forget, Officer Ryan was the forbidden PNC rapist racist. But I don't know. Yeah, Chop Shop guy, he's shady as fuck. Like he has. I don't know what his agenda is, and he's just out
crimes of opportunity, man.
He's a criminal of opportunity.
Those are the scariest people in our society. Somebody's walking down the street, sees a guy getting into his car. This guy's never committed a crime before, but he's like, I'm going to bash that guy over his head and steal his keys. That's the scariest son of a bitch in our society. It's that guy.
If you have a Chop Shop guy in your neighborhood, call the cops. To wrap up our Talking Points awards, we're going to transition into our final review with our traditional sarcastic selling points. I'm going to go first. I said that Crash is Volcano, but with no volcano.
Wow. I just said Crash is good old-fashioned racism.
Final review. Fight.
Okay, Nick, final review time. We're going to start out with what the other guys are saying about this movie. We're going to start out with Rotten Tomatoes. 73% of the critics thought this was a good movie. I do want to point out, this is the exact same amount of percentage for Big Trouble in Little China.
I noticed
which surprisingly was less racist than this movie.
Shockingly. If that's shocking to you, the 73% from the critics, the people have this at an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right. A little high for our taste. Moving over to Metacritic, the average weighted score, Metacritic gave it a 66, which translates to a 6.6 on the popcorn scale.
And just like Rotten Tomatoes, the people do have it higher at a 7.2.
Ooh, some mixed reviews. And now for our car crashing, race bashing, navigator smacking, human trafficking, all about race in your face score. Brought to you by a 91 blockbuster carjacking from IMDb,
a 7.7.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the people in Los Angeles were not on the same page because they're hella racist, but we are on the same page. Time to get into what we are saying with our laughable log lines, popcorn points, and our final thoughts. It's my turn to go first. Big, heavy load lift to do. Nick, my laughable log line is everybody sucks and everybody's racist, and it's going to win an Oscar, apparently. And Nick, this is a 3.5. I am absolutely freaking shocked. I remember this movie being good, and it really is not. And the Achilles heel is the writing. The dialogue is so over the top. We talked about it. We said the best scenes were the ones where you had to read between the lines, and the racism was not overtly bashed over your head with this poor writing. Best screenplay, by the way. But it was just subtleties you picked up, and body language and acting and just uncomfortableness of scenes and the way they developed, and they left you thinking. It wasn't even trying to teach me like, hey, racism's bad. It was just like, this is how the world is. Everyone's shitty towards one another, and there's just shitty consequences. There's not any character arcs or story arcs that are wrapped up. Terrence Howard and Thandie Newton, they're treating each other like they're on a brink of a divorce, and she almost explodes in a car accident, and Terrence punches out some carjackers and is basically asking to get shot by the cops. Then they call each other and say, I love you. Like, we didn't see any growth in that relationship at all. Like at all. Good guy, Officer Hansen. Suddenly, bad guy, Officer Hansen. Murders a guy, burns his car, walks away. No repercussions from that. Farhad. We didn't really talk about the storyline, but Michael Pena's character does change the locks in the store, and Farhad has been so paranoid from his mistreatment as like a lot of xenophobia. This is supposed to be like post 9/11. Racism and just racial tensions are at an all-time high.
Never mentioned 9/11.
And he thinks everyone's out to get him. So he targets Daniel and comes up with the gun and ends up, shooting the daughter with blanks. And then like the whole family just kind of walks inside and Farhad's just outside awkwardly by himself. Like, dude, this guy almost committed murder. And we're all just like hugging and like walking back in the house. And Farhad's just out there like holding a revolver. Luda lets a bunch of illegal immigrants or human traffic victims loose in Chinatown. All right. There's not really any story with Brendan Fraser and Sandy Bully. And it just all seems like it's a bunch of intros and then flip-flops. It's like, oh, you think they're bad, but then they're kind of good. Or you think they're good, but nope, they're kind of bad. So I'm not quite sure if there is a message. The only storyline that left me thinking was when Peter got killed, I was like, oh shit, that's got to be such a heavy toll on Officer Hansen. I would love to see that be played out. Never see that.
Burn the car.
Like I said, I think the intentions behind it were trying to be good, but just the way it was delivered was sloppy, convoluted. I said it. It seems like it's a long instructional video of how to not be racist and how to point racist things out. It's just hard to deliver this kind of complete story arc to an audience. And the movie leaves you thinking like it wrapped it up in such a satisfying way, but it totally doesn't. It doesn't deliver on any messages. It doesn't deliver on any character development. It's not even a good message of how to not be racist. It just seems like a weird display. Like you said, it's like shit's happening and you're just watching it. Also the music. I hated the score. Like the
so
vocal,
bad.
Like nothing. Like, so I'm shocked that this won Best Picture. I'm shocked that this won Best Screenplay because I think the worst part about this is the writing. The 3.5 comes from the actors because I thought Ludacris did a really good job. Terrence Howard did a really good job. Michael Pena did a really good job. Sandra Bullock in this movie for very little did a really good job. Don Cheadle, the actors are what pull the weight of this movie. And man, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked it's not good. I'm shocked. Nick, hit me.
All right, James, my laughable log line is automobile-related encounters lead to enhanced racism. This is a 2.5 for me. I'm 1 full point lower from you. My score has gone down from our pre-pops. James, this is the perfect example of movies I wanted to watch when we started this podcast. So Oscar bait, critical darlings, quote unquote, important movies, and debunking this kind of bullshit. This movie shows me the disconnect between Hollywood and the rest of the world. Like, this is what they think racism is. And I wrote this down before you told me everything about Paul Haggis. I said, this is their view on race issues. And it reminds me of how they acted during the Me Too movement. Because they went ahead and said, hey, if you see a guy harassing a girl and forcing her to have sex, say no. And I was talking to you about this during that time. And I said, everyone in the world, every man in America would have stood up and said no. It's just you people. It's you people. It's you. Oh, I'm trying to dunk on liberals who think they're smart but don't know what racism is. What the fuck are you? Do you know, Paul Haggis? You don't know anything about what happens in the real world here.
Strap the fuck in. Nick's on a soapbox.
Yeah.
Let him cook.
It pisses me off. This is not how the world works. This is your view of how the world works. Same with Me Too. It's like, yeah, speak up when you see your boss raping your coworker. It's like, it only happens for you guys. It doesn't happen for me. I'll call out racism anytime I see it, but I don't see it as openly as you're portraying it or as you think what's going on. So this movie is so forced. The dialogue is offensively on the nose. The characters just suck from start to finish. No one grew. You know how much we love character development. There's no character development here. Everybody's a piece of shit. It was like Paul Haggis was just preaching at me. But who the fuck are you, Paul Haggis? Like, what was I supposed to learn from this movie? Everybody's bad, but don't yell slurs at people? but also the people who are stereotyped actually are bad and criminals. Thanks, Paul. Message received. It's disappointing in Exhibit A on why people are skeptical of these fucking rewards and why these pander picks actually win awards and the actual general public is pissed about it. Shape of Water, fuck you. Crash, fuck you. You're going to tell me what movies are good?
Shape of Water
Fuck
always
you.
catches strays from Nick on this podcast. That's a guarantee.
Stray, dude.
That's a
Catching
guarantee.
a real stray. And I feel like this is why people, when the movie critics say, this is a good movie, we say, fuck you, I'm going to go spend my movie on Endgame. Because that's actually a good movie that I'm going to sit and enjoy instead of being preached by some overarching Canadian who's like, hey, don't yell racial slurs at people. Thanks, fuckface. I knew that. So eat a bag of dicks. It's a 2.5. Be lucky that I didn't go lower.
And with that, what the Just Play It podcast is saying, for movies released in 2005 that starred Terrence Howard, Four Brothers is a way better movie than Crash. Oh boy. All right, Nick. Well, that was Crash. That was our best picture movie of the year. Wow, what a freaking number to land on. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for your review. So we're going to keep on keeping on. Please join us next time. You're not going to see us for about 2 weeks. Yes, we are going invisible for the stretch of 14 days. But when we return for our fantastic episode 4, it's going to be a hell of a thing.
James, I might even say it's going to be double fantastic.
Please join us as we clobber on some NCU content.
Flame on.
And with that, we thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please remember to follow us. We are at Just Play It Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. We are at Just Play It Pod on X. We're going to hit the road. We are heading gone. We're going to the Oscars after party. And remember, if you get carjacked outside of a Blockbuster and you're having them night sweats as a nightmare, don't be a little whiny bitch. Be a Paul Haggis. Wake up, write a shitty concept, and win an Oscar. And then get fucking dragged by a podcast 20 years later. Don't be a predator, though.
Don't assault women in the process.
Don't be a predator, though. Yeah, Terrence Howard Mang fucked up Luda in them streets in like a cardigan.
She got that forget.